Come on, camera. There we go. Okay, so hello and welcome to the LCS Weekly Recap, a weekly show where me and Total Crumpet here talk over the week's LCS, talk over our favourite games, our favourite moments, and our Player of the Week. I am Red Arrow 21, also known as Salty Wilson, and this is the wonderful Total Crumpet, also known as Ralka.
Hey there, and because Wilson has internets which work very well, I'm only going to be available in pixelated picture format.
Yes, when I have good connection, this A will be streamed and B will have webcam for Crumpet over here. Unfortunately, I am at home currently where the internet is not good and can barely handle Skype's audio, let alone video, let alone streaming. So that's not good.
Enough of that, though. Wilson has an advantage over almost everyone that's going to be watching this picture on the grounds that he actually got to see the LCS live.
Yes,
at
I
Wembley,
did. Look.
Which is very jealous.
I made notes. Look, you can... There we go. Mirror image. You can see the notes I made. Handwritten notes. And most importantly, handwritten notes as signed by the wonderful Shocks. That was a good moment. That was one of my high points. The other was hugging one Riot Bro, who was also known as Olaf, I'm told. And when asked if he liked warm hugs, he said yes. So I hugged him. But anyway, enough about what could possibly be classed as sexual harassment to Riot employees. Let's get on to the games. This week, neither me nor Crumpet has had time to watch the day 2 of the North American scene. So whilst we'll briefly cover those in terms of who won and who lost, we won't be able to go into any great detail because obviously we haven't seen the games.
On top of that, those games that we're going to be skipping over when we do the initial cap, but we're going to be covering them in much more depth, will be Curse versus Cloud9, Super Hot Crew versus Copenhagen Wolves, and then Alliance versus Copenhagen Wolves. So yes. A brilliant showing from them. And then our Player of the Week comes from Roccat versus Gambit, I believe.
Yes, that's true.
Good.
So this week the games that played were Curse versus Cloud9, TSM versus Dig, LMQ versus CLG, EG versus Complexity, Dig versus Complexity, TSM versus EG, CLG versus Curse, Cloud9 versus LMQ, SK versus Alliance, Super Hot Crew versus Copenhagen Wolves, Millennium versus Roccat, Gambit versus Fnatic, Roccat versus Gambit, SK versus Super Hot Crew, Fnatic versus Millennium, Alliance versus Copenhagen Wolves. The other thing to note was, because it was held in London, most of Gambit had visa issues because they're Russian, and apparently it's difficult for Russians to get UK visas. So 4 of Gambit were substitute players, and we'll talk about that more in depth when we get to those games, because I do want to highlight the brilliance of those subs, to be honest. So
our first match then would be Curse versus Cloud9. We will cover this in more depth later.
Yep.
But Cloud9 came away with a victory there. It was expected, I'd say.
Yeah, one is always expecting Cloud9 to win, even against TSM.
The Riot stats were 83% in favour of Cloud9.
Like, the only people that reliably are expected to take games off Cloud9 at the moment are really LMQ.
Yep.
I thought it was a good showing by Curse. Curse have been getting they've been getting a lot of hate really recently. They used to be a much higher tier team than they are now. But I think from watching their games, I think they're definitely improving. And they're all very humble as well. Or certainly Voyboy, who is, I would say, the face of Curse almost, is a very, very humble person. Like, he will always come away saying, like, yeah, I think we could have done better. And he always says he's sorry. Like, he apologizes to his fans for losing the game. Mm-hmm. I think Voyboy is, like, he's much nicer than people give him credit for.
Yeah. So, I mean, overall, brilliant showing from Curse, especially in the early game, actually managing to take the early game away from Cloud9.
Curse came out of early game with a gold lead. Very, very impressive.
Not easy. However, Cloud9 in the end, with better team fights, did in the end take that off.
Yes.
And the next match is TSM versus Dignitas.
That early invade. Let me tell you, at that moment, it was hard to be a TSM fan. 2-0 off invading. Like, they went in too early and they overstayed, and Dig just collapsed on them and murdered them horribly.
Yeah, it's all well and good trying to get a ward on someone's buff or maybe on their lane.
But they overstayed, and if you overstay when people know where you are, you're going to get outmaneuvered, especially if you stay in the same place.
Yes. And they did. So.
Yes.
Fairly standard game from there, though, as far as I believe.
TSM did recover a little bit by punishing overextension from Dignitas. Like, some of their solo lane are extended very, very close to the duo lane of TSM after the swap. But like I feel that was more a mistake on Dignitas's part than a great play on TSM. Like, yeah, it was good for them to punish it, and a lot of people wouldn't punish properly. But like, I think they kind of lost at that level 1. And then on top of that, you've got Bjergsen picking Syndra into Nocturne,
Yeah.
which is
High
just a
mobility
recipe
jungler,
for getting
low
horribly
mobility
murdered.
mid laner.
I'll cover this more as
yeah.
we go on because there's been a few Syndra picks this week, but I really don't think Syndra is good in this meta. Like, nothing against Bjergsen. Bjergsen is a very, very good player, and his Syndra mechanics are frequently very, very on point. I simply don't think Syndra works when there's so many viable, popular champions that can easily dive on and kill her.
Yeah. So the next game will be LMQ versus Counterlogic Gaming, which in fact Wilson has managed to misspell on the notes here. It says LMG.
Yes, I'm going
which
to
is
assume that autocorrect has screwed me
But-
once again on that one.
But anyway, LMQ played Counterlogic Gaming with Counterlogic Gaming taking the win there. They were the favourite, but only by a little bit.
I would favour LMQ, to be honest. LMQ are very, very, very strong, especially Xiao Wei Xiao. He's such a strong mid laner. Like, he was a bit shaky last week with his Pantheon into Kassadin, but overall he's been very, very dominant in the mid lane. He's been very strong and good roaming. And No Name as well is very good at controlling the jungle. He's one of the only junglers we've seen in NA or EU playing Nunu effectively.
Yep.
Nunu was popular for a while, but No Name's really picked him up and shown, like, this is how you steal everything as Nunu.
I mean, you can tell the way that game really went with the overall scores for the players. No Name went 1-6 as Jarvan. He was level 13 when the game ended. Xiao Wei Xiao did well, but he was only 3 for 4. On the other hand, Double Lift went 10-2 on Jinx with 8 assists. And Link, their mid laner with an Orianna, went 4-1 and 16. There's very little you can do once you get an Orianna and a Jinx at that point.
Yeah, like, Orianna and Jinx are so strong in the late game, especially with Vi and Shyvana as ball delivery. That's so scary.
Very tanky in exactly the way Shyvana needed to be. They did have Ackerman on Lulu for LMQ to sort of try and put that back, but in the end, you've got a Vi and you've got a Shyvana. Ackerman can only slow so many people.
I do remember some very, very, very good cues from Ackerman in moments where he was getting ganked. He would land perfect little answers to get away. So I think it's worth highlighting that actually his Lulu mechanics were very, very on point.
Yeah, I think the disappointment there would be then that, Double Lift was given free sway, shall we say. It wasn't entirely free, he did die twice, but
I think one thing that's been highlighted recently is actually Double Lift is not that good at laning.
No.
I was talking to one of my friends who was at LCS with me, and he was saying that he thinks Double Lift's lane is actually carried very hard by Afromu, and what Double Lift is good at is those team fighting mechanics. Like, we've all seen him kite down entire teams on Vayne. Clearly, he's very mechanically skilled, but yeah, I've seen his lane mechanics called into question. So I would suggest that maybe to beat a team with Double Lift on, you want to take him into that 2v2 in the early game. You want to force him to be pressured where he's not as confident as much as possible.
Yeah.
And not let him get to that level 18 hyper carry moment where suddenly you go, oh god, Double Lift, please, my anus.
Yeah, the point at which sort of he starts sieging a tower and you just sort of bend over and spread your cheeks. But anyway, after that, the next game followed the final game of that day, I believe.
That is the final game of the day.
Evil Genius versus Complexity.
This
Evil Geniuses were the favourite, and they went through with the
massacre.
Yeah.
Like,
Altec
at 17 minutes in,
and 1.
EG were engaged on. Complexity were 4v3, and they had the engage, and EG killed all of them and didn't die.
Yeah, I mean,
that is game over.
You can tell that you're not doing particularly well. Prolly, at the end of the game, was 0-4 on LeBlanc. Didn't have the burst he needed to kill things. He only had Athene's and Sorcerer's Boots. He couldn't do what he needed to do. On top of that, Robert X. Lee on Lucian, 0-3. He had only just managed to finish Bloodthirster and Trinity Force.
Yeah.
The only kill that Complexity managed to get was on Kez. 1 for 5. So Kez died 5 times to get that 1 kill. And a lot of those kills actually went onto Altec over on Twitch, who finished the game with Blade the Rune King, Yumaru's Infinity Edge, and a Zeal and a Dagger, so clearly go for that Phantom.
We have seen a lot of this Twitch Yumu's build recently.
Yeah, and I'd say in this case, it very, very definitely worked. Interestingly enough, though, Helios bringing out the Nunu in the jungle.
Like I said with No Name, Nunu is very, very popular he's more popular as a kind of supporting jungler, where his job is not so much to go around ganking all the lanes, getting all the kills, getting super fed and killing everything, or being super tanky. His job is more to just make the other jungler's life suck. And he almost always picks up on that sight stone to know where the enemy jungler is. He goes around eating the enemy jungler's buffs without a care in the world. And he's very, very popular in China and in Korea, and less so in NA and EU, I think.
One thing I do like about that team as well was Enox up in the top lane with a tanky Rengar up against Lulu. Of course, Lulu can slow you down, but Rengar has a slow. If he's got the ferocity, he's got a stun, and if he leaps out of a bush, he's actually got the same length of range as your Glitter Lance, so there's nothing you can do to stop him.
I'll tell you, one of the scariest things in League when you're first playing it is when this kitty cat comes pouncing out of a bush at you and just starts munching down your health bar, and you've got no idea what's going on, but you know you're dying and you don't like it at all.
No, you're busy there sort of trying to CS because you know you need to get the last hits, and you're struggling a bit, and then you'll be like, all right, well, what am I going to get next? And you're thinking about that. You're thinking about what your team's doing. You're going, oh, well, I need to be looking at this, that, and the other, because that's what the pro players look at. And then all of a sudden, you look at yourself and you're half health, and there's a kitty cat eating your left leg.
Yes, the kitty cat has mistaken your leg for a packet of whiskers.
Yeah, Inox had a very strong showing there.
Yes, that's
and I do like.
I do like this tank Rango. Like, there's things I like about it and things I don't. One is if you double raw, you get a lot of resistance and health, which makes you very hard to kill. What I don't like about tank Rango is I don't really see why. If someone came up to me and they were like, you can focus the Rango that's built full tank and isn't really doing any damage, or something else, I don't understand why you'd focus Rango at all. Because unlike something like Renekton, he's not putting out that AoE magic damage. He's not putting out loads and loads of stun pressure.
No, but you'll find that with a Spirit Visage, with his ultimate, with the Bush Jump, he still does put out a lot of damage, even though he hasn't built any items. It's not as much as he would have done had he gone triple Dorans into Yumaru's or something ridiculous.
Go Ryan Choi and go Dorans into Tiamat into all 3 Brutalizer items.
It's not as much damage as that. He's not going to one-shot your AD carry, but it's enough damage that you have to pay attention. Because if you
this was the conclusion I reached, is that his base damage must be good enough that you can't just leave him on your ADC.
And that's it. Rengar's base damage is high enough that if he jumps in and you go, oh, well, actually, we're going to focus Altec and Ziggs. All right, you do that. And then by the time that you've even considered killing Ziggs, who's probably escaped, and considered killing Twitch, who's probably escaped with his invisibility, Nunu has slowed you, you're never catching up. Crepo has bound you with Morgana, you're never catching up. And all of a sudden, you realize that Inox has a double kill because he's eaten Lulu and Lucian.
Okay, fair enough.
And then you sort of go, well, team plea team.
The other thing is, I've always thought that damage Rengar, way more fun.
It is a lot more fun, but their team composition was lacking a major tank with that Nunu build.
I think that's true.
But yeah. Anyway,
and the other thing is, like, we've been seeing a lot of tanks top lane. Like, I wouldn't really expect to see someone build full assassin top lane.
No. So then the next 4 games, while we haven't been able to see them, there were 2 major upsets in this.
Yes, the first is
match.
Dignitas versus Complexity. 90% of people voted for Dignitas to win.
And Complexity won. And
Complexity won
not
hard.
By a small distance. Yeah.
Like I said, we haven't seen the game, but from the scores and from what I've heard,
they closed it out early.
Massive, massive upset.
They closed it out very early. Cutie Pie was level 15 on Jinx, 1 and 3 by the time that game ended. Cassadin got through, probably went 4-0. Robert X. Lee managed to pick up Lucian and went 6-0. And then Kez managed to get Evelyn and went 4-0. There is nothing you can do about that. And the one kill that Cutie Pie managed to get was Bubba on Morgana, which didn't really help because I'm probably sure he
It's the
died after
moustache,
it.
man. It's the moustache. He got baited in by the moustache.
He was like, I need to kill the moustache. And then the moustache went, but I have team.
He got confused and
Aha.
thought it was Brom.
Anyway. So,
So,
yeah, that
yeah,
went
big upset.
pretty one way
Dignitas have
as
been
well.
very, very strong recently.
And that was not necessarily just so much of an upset because it happened, because things like that do happen.
But also
It's
because
the
it was
fact
so
that it happened
strong.
so
Yeah.
hard. Yeah. Overall, actually, only one of the matches actually went in favor of the society of the community vote. The next match was Team Solo Mid versus Evil Geniuses, with TSM coming out on top. The next match again was somewhat of an upset. Just over 85%
we saw CLG
of
versus
people
Curse, with Curse
voted
winning.
CLG, and Curse took that away. Although, again, having not seen the match, but having seen the stats, you can see why. Link managed to get LeBlanc, however, went dead level, built the DFG to try and get additional kills, and went 3 for 3 by the end of the match. Double Lift only managed to go 2 for 2, and no one else went positive.
So one thing I
While
would
on the other
say
side,
about
with
LeBlanc.
Curse, Cop on Corky went 7 and 2.
Oh, I'm so happy
That's
Corky's making
huge.
a comeback. He's so cool.
Although we do on Quas have a Mage Kale.
Yeah, we've been seeing people alternating. Some people are going with the Runans build with Nash's Tooth for AoE DPS, but some people are going slightly more burst oriented with just more AP items.
I
and
cannot
Lich Bane.
blame him. With a pick-oriented team, with Thresh on X Special, I Will Dominate on Elise, Voyboy on Yasuo, there is so much ability to make a single pick. Burst is where it's at. A Thresh chain, Quas can kill something. An Elise Cocoon, Quas and Dominate can kill something. Voyboy, at this point, I'll be fair, he's got static, he has a BF sword, and he's got Blade of the Ruin King. He can probably kill something on his own, but if not, Quas is there to pick it up.
The other thing we've seen is Yasuo is very, very strong on his own. Like, even without his team there, as we saw, was it last week, that Bjergsen 1v2 on Yasuo? Incredibly strong champion.
And again, went very aggressive as well, picking up the Ignite for Voyboy.
Yeah.
Which again, Yasuo has got a lot of kill potential on his own. Putting Ignite into the mix is ridiculous. But anyway, it was a reasonably close match by the look of the statistics, except that Curse put their kills in one place.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how Curse do in these coming weeks, because I think I've been saying it a lot. I think Curse are improving.
They are. Their laning phase is improving. Their team fights are getting better.
Yeah.
Everything.
So yeah, that's
the last match of the NA LCS for this week was Cloud9 versus LMQ, with LMQ taking the win there.
Yeah, LMQ obviously, like we've said, very, very strong. Over from China. China arguably is a stronger scene than America. I won't go too far in because obviously we're both EU players and I don't really want to get into
the tactics vary very differently, and a lot of the Oriental players tend to just practice microing more often.
The other thing is that China is so aggressive. Like,
we saw
a Worlds OMG will go so hard on you and it will really, really, really hurt. They will not give you a moment to think.
Yeah, I think last year I watched one of the Korean matches, and there was like 4 for 2 for the first blood in the invade before minions spawned. They just don't back out. If they think they can take the damage, they will.
Yeah.
In the end,
that's
Xiao
more...
Xiao went 4-0 on Oriana. Vasily 5-3 did pretty well. Ackerman on Lulu got 3-1, so he's done very well there. And in return, Hai managed to get Kassadin, but that was shut down. I mean, he went 5-2, but his items
It's actually pretty interesting. We didn't see the game, so I don't know. But in what I've seen, I think Kassadin actually matches up okay against Oriana now. He has a little bit of an issue farming, but he can trade with her. Where before, Kassadin would Q you, and Oriana would Q you and auto-attack you. And Oriana would win the trade because her Q would go through before... Her QW would go through before she got silenced. And then she'd take the silence and she'd hit you with the magic damage from the auto-attacks and the physical damage from the auto-attacks.
Yep.
And all she'd take would be the magic damage from the Q. Now, because the Q shield forms when Kassadin casts it and not when it hits the target, Kassadin ignores quite a lot of the damage from the QW combo and the magic damage from the auto attacks. So he tends to win the trades very, very hard, which I kind of suspect wasn't fully intended, and I find very, very frustrating
I
when.
will say though, for me, he definitely loses those trades early on until he has his ultimate. Because
Yeah,
before then, I mean, he can get off his ultimate, he'll Q W and then put in a force pulse and then ultimate away. Before then, he'll have to walk away, and there's this period when he's walking, he'll take 2 or 3 auto attacks from Oriana. They ramp up, especially early game. That passive
yeah,
ramps
I
up those
love
auto attacks
Oriana's passive. Like the
hard.
first few times I played Oriana, I just didn't really use the passive at all, and I was just like, Oriana's terrible. Why is everyone saying she's so good? I don't understand.
Yeah,
And
those auto
then
attacks chunk.
I went away and I reconsidered my life, and 3 months later, I'm reading this tier list online. Just like I think I'd been out of the game for a little while, and I was like, well, I don't really know what's like top tier picks and bans. I don't know what I should be banning. I don't know what maybe if I'm gonna be playing like tryharding in normals with friends, maybe what I should be picking to learn in terms of like rank fives. And I'm looking at
Mhm.
this tier list, and it's like Oriana I think was rated as like top tier or like one off top tier, and I was like, I should go back to learning Oriana. And I went and I read guides, and I kind of really evaluated her kit, and I was like, that is an incredibly strong passive.
Mhm.
That is phenomenal.
It is, and again, I think that's probably where that came from. If you can slow down Kassadin's early game, your team can begin to think about snowballing, or at the very least, not getting dumpsters as soon as Kassadin does get his ultimate and his Rod of Ages and that damage.
Yeah, the way
And I reckon
people
that's
have
what
beaten
happened there.
Kassadin is to beat Kassadin into the floor early on.
It's the only way to do it. It's
Like
not
you
just to beat
need to
Kassadin into
almost
the
be
floor, but
murdering
to
him
get
before he's
yourself
even got
enough
his
of
ult.
yeah, you have to get yourself enough of a lead that when he does start to roam and when he does start to do that damage, you can just kill him. You're
Yeah.
looking at teams with silences or stuns or things like that. One thing I would be really interested to see, actually, knowing that Kassadin is countered with stuns and things like that, that other teams are landing on Kassadins nowadays, would be a Kassadin to run Clarity.
Clarity, or do you mean cleanse?
Or Cleanse, sorry. Because Kassadin jumps in, the first reaction is to try and CC him.
Yeah, I think maybe that could work.
And
Like
you don't think about it, because if you think about whether or not you should stun Kassadin,
he's
he's killed
murdered you.
someone.
Yeah.
So the immediate reaction is, oh no, you're on Elise. You cocoon him straight off the bat. There is no thought process. Kassadin is right next to you. He needs to be stunned. And I'd
The thing
really
I
like
guess
to
maybe
see a
we could
cleanse on a
see,
Kassadin.
considering the
But
tank Kassadin is now more popular, where he builds like
yeah,
he builds like the Iceborne Gauntlet, the Rounderins, that sort of thing. Maybe we might end up seeing Quicksilver Sash brought into that if he's really getting stun
yes,
locked hard.
that again that could be
Because
done
like he
really
could
well.
pop that, he'd get the immunity, well not the immunity, he'd get it all removed, and then he can just walk straight out again and walk back in, and that's what Kassadin's strong with. Like is walking in and out
Yeah.
and just doing bursts of damage. And
And
with tank
chasing
Kassadin
someone like
slowing everyone
nobody's
for
business.
God knows how long.
Yeah. Yeah, chasing people as well is something that Kassadin does very
Yeah.
well, again with the Icebound Gauntlet. I actually, at one point, it wasn't this LCS, but the previous one, I actually watched a Kassadin chase a Twisted Fate after Twisted Fate used his ultimate.
Yeah, like
As in, he used his ultimate to get away, and then Kassadin still caught up with him and killed him. And
yeah,
it
I
was
mean like
really funny.
level 16, that Void Walk is on a 2.5 second cooldown. It is I think roughly double flash range.
It is. Yep,
So
almost
until that
exactly,
mana
actually.
cost starts ramping, Kassadin can traverse the map very, very fast.
Mm-hmm. So, after that, we go to the Europe matches.
We move on to LCS London, which was fantastic. I'll probably say it several more times. It was so good. Like the play, the watching, it was amazing. The crowd made it phenomenal. Like I've never really understood some of the stuff about the crowd. I've never really understood why people cheer awards, and now I understand. Like it's so like the atmosphere was electric. Like everyone was on edge. Everyone was super hyped to be there. And like, I guess if you were in the crowd and you're watching this, like, thank you for being there. Thank you for making it such a great event.
I'm
And
sure those
I
of
think
you
to
that watch it
Riot
on
as well.
Twitch will have known as well. Be like, why are they cheering all these wards? It will be a very different atmosphere.
Yeah, I have seen on Reddit people get really, really grumpy about ward cheering. And I'll be honest, I kind of agreed with them a little bit. Until you sit there in a game that you've paid to come and see for 30 minutes, like, you're super, super excited to be there. And, like, you've paid to be there, and 30 minutes in, nothing's happening. Like, you want to have a laugh. You want it to be fun, and that's why you start cheering for the wards.
Oh, look, a pink ward's died. Hooray!
I think some of the hardest cheering I heard all weekend was for the pink wards.
4-0 trade near the Baron pit. Nah. Oh look, there's a pink ward.
Pink
dead.
ward!
Yes!
Ah! My absolute favourite was when the cameraman panned away from a pink ward being destroyed.
Yes, and the crowd booed.
The crowd booed and started chanting remake.
And then, in fact, one of the casters had to apologise for the cameraman.
Yeah, it was so it was so much fun.
Anyway,
But
without further ado,
I digress.
our first match was SK versus Alliance. Alliance taking the win there.
I tell you one thing: the crowd was definitely with Froggen.
Oh, we had football chants.
We had football
for
chants.
Anivia.
People chanted Froggen's name. Like he was interviewed, and literally they had to pause while the crowd chanted Froggen. He was definitely a crowd favorite. Like he's a big crowd pleaser with those occasional Anivia picks. I've talked many a time about how skilled I think Froggen is, how good his Anivia is, and I will say it. I'll probably take it to my grave. Froggen is amazing at this game.
Yeah.
Certainly one of the best mids in EU.
He's got micromanagement that is, I think, out of the league of most of the EU players. We're looking at the top tier players, and then potentially even to the Korean levels of microing. He just gets it, I think.
Yeah.
And I understand none of the players get to this point without some innate skill at the game. But seriously, I think Froggen
is
gets that right.
phenomenal.
And you can see it with his Yasuo play in this game.
Yeah, his Yasuo was big. I think it might have been D-Man who at one point just said, well, it's not 1v2ing. And the whole crowd was like, ooh.
Yeah.
But it wasn't 1v2, but it was very, very good.
In fact, 15 and a half minutes in, Froggen tries to 1v2 and dies.
Yeah. Do you know what I learned from that game?
Almost gets it, but does die.
You know what I learned from that game? Wind Wall stops Braum ult.
Yes.
Did not know that.
Yes.
I assume it doesn't block the knock-up AoE around Braum, but I suspect it's something to do with the way it's programmed. I suspect it's a projectile that leaves a trail,
projectile. Yeah.
Which would explain why the wind wall blocks it. Because I thought it was some sort the league's programming is weird. I thought it was just designed to be a terrain modifier, but I suspect it's a projectile like Nocturne's Q, which is why wind wall blocks it.
Now, interestingly enough, Lucian was picked into Braum again.
Yeah, I know you love that matchup.
It irritates me a bit, but I don't think it mattered too much this time round. There was early aggression. Tabs got a great farm. It didn't really matter simply because of Nif, who was on Gragas, which was awesome.
Gragas pick good with Yasuo as well.
Yeah, amazing with Yasuo. If he can land a barrel, of course, everyone that is hit by that barrel is knocked up.
Yeah, it gives Froggen a free pick, or if he's really, really good at, if it's a clumped up barrel and he reacts quickly, he can actually catch multiple people from that barrel.
Yeah, I mean, that gives Froggen the ability to say, Nif, I want to kill Sven. I want to kill Jessis. Do it.
Yeah.
And he'll do it. He'll ult, he'll Q, he'll E as soon as they try and flash away. Nothing will happen. You're not getting away from it.
So something else I noticed this week, or certainly this weekend in LCS, Braum is quite weak, has been highlighted, to very early pressure. He's not a fan of having to CS while being hit.
And basically. That's something that Gragas is huge.
That's something that both Gragas and Lucian do very well. So I'm wondering if maybe these Lucian picks into Braum are to try and stop Braum getting so tanky that he can just sit in front of his ADC for an entire fight.
One of the other things is that Tabs, and I suspect all of the other ADCs in the LCS, are now learning when to and when to not ultimate with Lucian.
Yeah, I think I did see a few unbreakable, fully blocked Lucian ults, much less.
Interestingly enough, I've looked at it, and Braum's Unbreakable is actually on something like a 3-second longer cooldown than the length of time Lucian is firing during his ultimate. So if he uses it, you have 3 seconds to begin your ultimate before he can use it again and block at least something. And it's actually something that did go very well. In the end of it, I mean, Nif threw in a barrel, or there was a Q that went in. N-rated took them because other team members couldn't. And then, of course, that then meant that Tabs just went, all right, then I will shoot everyone.
Yeah.
There was a 4-minute first blood. It was actually beautiful. Jessis on Ziggs is defending his mid tower. He's on blue side. And Wicked and Shook on Jax and Lee Sin, respectively, come up from Jessis's red buff.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, in the Wraith brush, Wicked starts his counter-strike, walks forward, flashes, and then leap strikes. Crosses the
Yeah,
entirety
he
of
went
mid
a
lane.
mile. Like,
Stun under the tower. Froggen jumps in. Shook jumps in. Jesses disappears.
I think this is actually quite a
Completely
big thing on Jax,
disappears.
because you've actually got quite a small window for that Counter-Strike stun, because you've
Mhm.
actually only got a second in which you can use it, because it will channel for 2 seconds, and you can only reactivate it after 1, I think, to
Yes, I
pop that
think he
stun.
did anticipate that
So
he would
you've got a
actually
second
use the
window to
final
make sure
piece.
that you land and you're in the right place and nothing misses and they don't flash out. So I think that's actually quite good play from Wicked there.
Yeah. The other thing was that actually Jesse's was at the time standing between his tower and the wall. He wasn't in the middle of the lane. He was standing between
Yeah.
the tower and the wall. He probably knew that they were coming that way and just didn't want to take an easy Q. But at the same time, that meant that he had nowhere to satchel charge out from. He didn't even have time to flash. He got a bad satchel charge off, and that was it. At the time, Shook had a Q on him. Yasuo had Q'd him a few times. That was it. He was dead.
Yeah.
At that point, Alliance then take the dragon. That gives 4-minute first blood to Froggen, and gives him a load of CS because he pushed a wave in, and a dragon that's completely free.
Yeah.
At about 10 minutes in, Jessis has been forced into double Dorans, and Froggen has a static Shiv.
Yeah, like
there is no
Froggen's
comparison to
Yasuo
gold there.
was huge that game.
Yeah.
And that's why we've seen quite a few Yasuo bans against Froggen. That's why. He picked it at the start of the season when Yasuo was first released. It wasn't as strong, but now clearly he's been practicing.
And it's a champion that lends itself to Froggen's micro skill.
Yeah. Like making
just
sure you
does.
hit each and every one of those Qs, making sure you're getting, as well as like making sure you're hitting them efficiently. Because obviously you're in a fight. There's going to be times when you can line up those Qs to hit 2 people.
Yeah.
And like you're basically halving your DPS for no reason if you're not.
Yeah, it lends himself to the same kind of micromanagement that Anivia does, making sure that your Q travels through the person and then detonating it.
Yeah.
Things like that. Those perfect walls. He got some amazingly quick wind walls out. I think at one point, actually, Braum managed to point blank Q into him, and he managed to get the wind wall.
Yeah, Froggen, like mechanically, is so good.
Froggen is actually, at this point, touching Braum's shield, and he gets a wind wall in the way. It was just, he was so on point. He knew exactly. He saw Braum raise his fist away from the shield. He went, he's queuing, wind wall, done. And the wind wall went out quicker than the Q. And that saved his life. Because there was
if that
nobody
Braum
sitting
Q
in
lands
wings.
on you, that's one of the things I hate about Braum. That Braum Q lands and there's people there, you die because you're slowed and then you're stunned.
Candy Panda was sitting there, invisible as Twitch, waiting for that Q to go out. Doesn't land it. And then Froggen manages to get away. So it was really good.
Yeah.
Very, very good skill. Anyway, next match was the Super Hot Crew versus Copenhagen Wolves that we will be covering later. But the Super Hot Crew took that away. We saw
I'm always happy to see Super Hot Crew win.
Massive Kale from Mima.
Impaler, I'd like to highlight, British, therefore was very much supported by the audience.
Yes, there was a lot of cheering.
A lot of cheering. He was also interviewed by the BBC. Gonna get a little bit sidetracked here. BBC did a piece on LCS London. They interviewed Impaler.
That's awesome.
But I think it's, again, sidetracking side, it's nice to see League growing as an esport. It's nice to see, like, maybe people be made aware. Although the thing I watched was like a little clip from, I think it was from the news, and it was like, League of Legends is a game where you control 5 champions. The aim of the game is to destroy the Nexus. It was very kind of like, it was like, I don't know, it just felt kind of middle class. It was like, what are these people talking about, eh? God, they're crazy.
Yeah, if it's going to be broadcast on BBC, it has to be put to the point where anyone from any background can understand. And if someone doesn't use a computer, it's going to be pretty difficult to understand what League is doing.
Yeah, that's. I think that's true. Anyway, I digress.
Are using pixels to beat each other up. Why would you even do that? But anyway,
I digress.
Massive Kale coming out from Mima, and in fact, he learns how to.
Yeah,
play
he
Kale
learns in the game. It started off weak.
I wouldn't say.
I appreciate Kale doesn't start off that strongly as a champion, but the ults were so off early game. Very, very, very early.
I wouldn't say that he's a bad Kale at any point in the game.
Christ, my face is glowing. I look like Two-Face.
Bad.
Sunset, please, hang on.
Good job.
Right, is that a bit better? That is a bit better. Okay.
Good. Right. I mean, I wouldn't say at any point he was a bad Kale. He definitely was a better Kale when he finished this match.
Yes.
And that's not just because he got a few easy kills.
One
19
also,
minutes in, there was a red buff kill and then steal. Very well done from Copenhagen Wolves, but didn't actually help them out at the end.
yeah.
Copenhagen Wolves, surprisingly, even though they lost, had amazing ward coverage. Brilliant clearing. But, yeah. I mean, Kautard took Fizz up against Selfie's Twisted Fate. Actually picked Fizz into it. It was a counter. But this, for me, is a solo queue thing that people need to get right. And it was odd seeing it happen in the LCS.
I like Fizz into Twisted Fate.
It's a brilliant match.
I would pick Fizz into Twisted Fate, but I am very, very confident with my Fizz. And also, I'm not an LCS player, I am a gold player.
Kautard isn't a confident Fizz, and it showed not necessarily in the early game. He actually got a very brilliant first blood. But late game, he just didn't quite know what to do with himself in all the engagements. He went in slightly too early sometimes, didn't play quite like an assassin, played a bit more like a bruiser, didn't quite know when he had to rotate and things. It was all right, but then eventually when Super Hot Crew started split pushing, Kautard was the only one that had any real gold, and he couldn't be everywhere at once. And so Super Hot Crew just started taking towers.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, like I said, we're going to cover that game more. The other thing is, Nami bubbled a Fizz Q. Just a quick side note. Bubble, again, because of the way it works, it knocks you up, displaces movement abilities, which means things like Fizz Q, Lee Sin Q won't hit.
Yep.
I just thought that was a nice note. Maybe people are learning to play against Fizz. I mean,
yeah,
there was also one moment where he went very, very aggressive, and he picked up a kill for a death, basically because I think he knew they were screwed anyway. He figured he might as well get a kill and 2 deaths than no kill and 2 deaths. But I think maybe a little bit inexperienced on the Fizz there.
Yeah, I think it's something he's going to be practicing. And, I mean, it was strong. Very strong early. And, I mean, it was still reasonably strong late game. But I think it's going to be one of those things where he practices it in scrims, works out the kinks, and then knows exactly what to do. The other problem, of course, was that Mimer's Kale was really good. And so Kautard jumped in, Twisted Fate Zonya'd, and then he was like, oh, all right, I'll kill Mr. Rolls. And then Kale ultimated Mr. Rolls, and then Twisted Fate, Kale, and Twitch started killing him. There was one point when he did exactly that. It was just around the Baron pit. He leapt straight in for Mr. Rolls. He landed his Q, and then Mimer landed his ultimate on Mr. Rolls, and Twitch, Kale, and Twisted Fate just went, oh, hello, Fizz. How are you
there's two things that are a big problem for Fizz. One is Zhonya's and the other is Kale ult. Because Fizz needs to delete people quickly, Zhonya's and E out.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Kale and Zhonya's make that very difficult.
Yes.
Anyway, like I said, we will come back to that game later.
Yep.
Two more games from day one.
Especially near the end. Very tightly contested in some situations. If fights went the other way, could have been a very different match. So Super Hot Crew walking away with that.
Millennium versus Roccat. This game lasted 17 minutes longer than it should have done.
Yeah.
This was the game of the ward cheer. The advent of the ward cheer at LCS London. Because Roccat got this early lead, and they were extending it, but I think they should have won the game. They had the Ziggs. Like,
no,
they didn't. They had the LeBlanc, even better. They had LeBlanc. They have this strong team, and they didn't end.
No, and
maybe they were scared. Maybe there really were issues associated with this Syndra, which again, very easy to dive on. Not that good, especially against Aatrox, LeBlanc, Lee Sin, Braum.
But the problem is that LeBlanc's dash has the same cooldown as Syndra's E.
Yeah.
Which is exactly why Syndra counters LeBlanc, is because every time LeBlanc gets a little too aggressive, Syndra puts her right in her place.
Especially from these higher tier LeBlancs like Peke, we've seen very, very good things in lane. Not LeBlancs, my god. Syndra's in lane. We've seen very good things in lane. We've seen these dashes countered by the W. Again, because that W is a displacement, it blocks. If you hit it before they land, the damage doesn't go through because it overrides the previous displacement.
Yeah. I mean, overall, I think that was the reason why it went that long, is because Syndra was good, and every time Overpowered tried to make a pick, if Syndra was nearby, he got stunned and couldn't do it.
But yeah,
the only thing was LeBlanc in the end managed to pick up a DFG instead of going for the traditional build, sort of going immediately into more power, and Azonia's actually went for the DFG. And that just meant occasionally Kerp just couldn't stop it. Yeah. Overall, actually, I think Millennium made some very bad decisions in terms of
I
what
was
is
favouring Millennium to win that
worth.
game.
In the end, or early on, sort of about 10 minutes in, Millennium take a dragon. However, in order to do that, 4 people from Rockout have rotated top. Millennium see Rockout top, and they say, we'll take dragon. What Rockout do is they take the first top tower, and then they don't stop.
Yeah.
Millennium think they'll stop. They don't. They take the second
I think
tower
I think that's just a
15
mentality
minutes.
thing. I think sometimes you think, oh, sometimes when you take a tower, you're like, okay, we've got a tower, let's back off now. So you kind of expect other people to do that. And the mark of a good player is they will know. They will go, oh, we've taken a tower. The enemy aren't stopping us. Let's go take another one.
Yeah. I mean, again, there was another one at about half an hour in. There was a massive fight around Dragon. A brilliant steal from Kotex. In fact, he got kicked out of the Dragon Pit by Yankos and then repelled back in for the steal.
Yes, Elise is very strong with those Dragon steals or Baron steals because of that percentile damage from her Q.
It was brilliant. But what happened in response was Celiver on Corki got a triple kill.
Yeah.
And then after that, Rockat got a free Baron.
So if you're going to steal a Dragon or a Baron, you kind of need to accept that your jungler might be doomed and not try and do too much about it afterwards. You've kind of got to go, we got it and our jungler died.
Yeah,
this is better than it could have been.
Millennium tried to re-engage to get Kotex out. It didn't work. Yeah, he went splat like the bug he was.
Yeah.
And the only one of them that actually got out, I believe, was J-Ree, because Cookie got a triple kill, and then I think Zazas got a kill as well. And yeah.
I think the resounding message from this game is that Rockat needed to end faster. I don't think they should have
ended it faster. And
they did eventually, they did eventually end it. They choked very well. They did keep that ward control. So much ward cheering. But I think they should have ended faster because there is a big, big danger with stalling a game like that the enemy team will simply farm themselves towards a more even footing. You don't
especially against an Irelia, a Syndra, and an Elise.
If you're gonna take that early game lead, use the early game lead. Don't throw it away stalling.
Yeah, I mean, overall, I think Millennium made the wrong decisions about what was worth for objectives, and then they also quite often made the wrong choice of who to focus in a team fight. There were several instances where they focused Zazas on Aatrox when he had his GA and Bloodwell.
Yeah.
It doesn't work.
Like,
you literally have
he
to
doesn't die. He doesn't die. God, I know.
3 times. Like, you have to kill a character 3 times. Surely you'd be better off killing someone else that's not just someone else. They're also really squishy.
Yeah, they die.
I'm sorry. They die once.
They're not a damn zombie.
Yeah, Aatrox was huge. Did very well, in fairness for Zazas. He knew that he could be sacrificial because if he was, Corki and LeBlanc and Lee Sin just went in and hammered things.
Well, I saw once he went and he effectively tanked with resurrection time.
Yeah,
because he died and his GA popped and he died and his Bloodwell popped. That actually stalled for like 8 odd seconds, which gave his team time to do stuff.
One other thing that Millennium did was when Aatrox went down with his passive or with GA, they waited for it. And that's a good 2 seconds when you could be doing something else. And I'll be honest, Illusion doesn't need much more than 2 seconds to kill something if he's close to it.
Yeah.
And they just waited. All 5 of them waited for Aatrox to get back up.
I would like to see more Aatrox, though. I think Aatrox, that tanky Aatrox build has been very strong recently.
Very, very strong.
When he first came out, he tended to be seen a bit more damage, but now you literally go Bork into tanky, and it's working out very well. That attack speed steroid is very, very good, as well as the healing.
His Dark Flight is massive for making
and that is a big knock-up. Like, it's a decent AoE, and it lasts a while.
I want to see an Aatrox and you're probably looking at an Elise or an Evelynn in the jungle because you're going to need the spell power, because then I want to see a Yasuo in the mid lane.
Yeah, I've played Aatrox Yasuo, and if you've got an Aatrox that hits his Qs, very, 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 very strong.
It's very easy to land those. So yeah, I'd love to see that. I don't know if it's going to happen, because it would be a lot of physical. But I don't know, maybe if
you're going to play a com like that, you end early. Not a Rockat strength.
No, not something we'd see from Rockat, but I don't know.
But maybe from one of the higher teams that are better with pressuring those towers, it would be a cool thing to see.
Especially with team fight oriented teams. Alliance, Fnatic, they could pull something like that off, and I think it would be huge.
Yeah.
We already saw it with the Gragas pick. With the Gragas pick on Nif to try and get those launches for the Yasuo. Yeah. It could be big.
Okay. I am just going to pause the recording quickly, and then we'll be right back with the rest of LCS London.
So the next match,
Yep.
that is Gambit versus Fnatic.
Yes.
Which well, who took the win there?
That was Fnatic.
Yes.
Gambit, however, playing with 4 subs, I thought put on a phenomenal showing.
Yes, I don't think it was a big surprise that Fnatic beat Gambit. Even with the entire team, Fnatic should have been on par to beat them.
Yes.
But again, Visa
what was
issues,
amazing was
they had to pick up 4 subs.
It wasn't just absolutely just destruction by Gambit. They won the lanes quite well, but then very, very good play from effectively these solo queue players. Like, they haven't been practicing as a team. They haven't been in this gaming house. They've been scrimming LCS teams all week. They've literally I don't know what the notice has been like, maybe a couple of weeks at most, but they've had Gambit go, look, we can't get visas. You're going to have to go to London. Like, you're going to have to get a plane to London, and you're going to have to go to this place. You're going to have to play these games for us.
Yeah. I mean, overall, Capuchon, I mean, people have seen him play. He's a very strong player, and apparently had to actually duel.
Yes, I have heard he had to duel Darien for
I think
his
that's
sub
really
position.
awesome. They had to duel Darien to prove that he's good enough.
In my head, I have an image of Darien dueling Cabochard in real life, you know, swords and pistols style.
Yep. Yeah, I reckon that happened because that's the most British way that Russians could have solved the problem.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, it was a very good showing, in fairness.
Yeah, like, Gambit played so well. Like, I don't have notes on this game because I had put them away expecting Fnatic to just stomp.
Yeah. Early on, Fnatic made full advantage of the fact that Gambit were 4 out of 5 subs and they weren't going to communicate as well as they could otherwise.
Very early pressure. I suspect slightly to mind game them into going on to tilt a little bit.
Early pressure. Very, very early
Lots
dragons.
of early
Fnatic take their 3rd dragon before 17 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that is
Fnatic
on
just
spawn for
vision control, objective control, everything.
But
unfortunately, Fnatic do slow down quite a lot.
It's an issue I think Fnatic have been having. Like, I don't think there's something up with Fnatic as a team. I think they're individually good players. You can tell because they win the lanes. Like, they do. Peke wins the lanes. Soaz has been known to say he thinks he's one of the best tops or the best top in EU. That is debatable, and I don't think you should, even if you are, I don't think you should ever go making that claim because it just makes you sound like a knob.
Yeah.
But quite aside from that, Soaz is a very good player. Reckless, was talent picked up at the beginning of last season, but played, but had to pick up experience because he wasn't old enough.
Yeah.
But like a young prodigy there. Yellow Star
he's been doing very, very well.
Yellow Star, very good. Cyanide, obviously very good player. They're all good players. I think something's up with their communication and team fights. I wonder if their heart's not in it because I've heard quite a few stories saying like Fnatic go out drinking like before they'll go out like get drunk at like 4 a.m. before they go to like the night before an LCS match, and I just kind of wonder if their heart's not quite in it anymore because their team fighting is just wrong. Like,
I don't know, but I mean overall, I think
they should be carrying these strong lanes into a phenomenally strong mid game where they win team fights and take objectives.
Yeah, I think their objective control isn't always on point. And as soon as they start to struggle, because for instance, Reckless won't go into a team fight, contradictory to his name, won't go into a team fight unless it's safe for him to go in and just kill everything. If it's not safe, if he doesn't think the peel is there, he just won't engage. Even if they say, focus him, we have to kill this person. If Reckless thinks he's going to go in and die, he just won't go in. And I don't know. For instance, when Peke was, I'm saying in his prime. I don't mean in his prime as in he was a better player, but when Fnatic and Peke were huge things back when Peke, for instance, pulled off the X Peke.
Yes, the time when backdooring was renamed.
I know that actually at the time that happened, X Peke was never the shot caller for Fnatic, and since he's been the player that's kept on, as it were. He's been the consistency through these team changes and that. It's difficult because now he is the shot caller. And he has to make more of these decisions. And I think it's something that he hasn't quite fully adapted to.
But
Um,
apart from to try and not to bash Fnatic too much,
no,
I
no,
mean, obviously they're a good
they
team.
do well.
I think this was a good sign for those Gambit subs. Like
Very
they
good
all
sign.
played very, very well. Like with the
Heaver picked up Zyra. He does this in the next game that they played the
yeah,
day
and
after.
his Zyra was so good. Like he showed why Zyra was a top tier support for
Yeah.
a long
For
time.
me, this is exactly the opposite of Coutard's problem, where he picked Fizz because it was a counter, not necessarily because he was really practiced at it.
Yeah,
Heaver
he
had a
picked Zyra
comfort
because he
pick.
goes, I can play Zyra.
It's
Like
not something we've seen
that's
very
what I
often.
can support on.
It wasn't picked very often back in spring.
Like,
I
yeah, Zyra took massive hits at the end of season 3. At the end of season 3, we saw Zyra in so many games. She was a top tier support with very, very strong utility with that root and that knockup. Lots of damage from the Q and the plants and the plant boost from the knockup.
It was a
But
comfort pick, and he did well with it.
they dropped her base damages and they upped her scaling, which ultimately kind of fucked her as a support.
As a support, yeah, because that's exactly what they wanted to
Yeah,
do. They
the
wanted
changes
to
were
move her away
designed
from
to
a
make her
support.
mid laning better.
Yes.
And like I played her mid lane a little bit, and then I found like she didn't have the strength for mid lane either. Because
No,
without
because
those
her
base
base damages
damages,
were
she
too
needed
high.
so many items to do stuff.
Yeah.
And you really need a mana sustain item on Zyra because she's a spam mage, not an assassin. She doesn't have any mana sustain in the same way someone
What really
like Veigar
impressed
does.
me with this game, first of all, at 28-30, Gambit, even though they're behind by so much, they managed to get 2 for 1 and Dragon because Heaver lands a 4-man.
Yeah, it was a
Stranglethorn.
phenomenal Stranglethorn.
It's
There was good
amazing. It
Stranglethorns
splits
all
up
over the
fight.
place.
Fury comes in, Luix goes in, Kamikar goes in, Nick lands spears like nobody's business, and team members fall down. The Baron is so the Dragon is stolen, and that's it. But what really impressed me with this is that 35 minutes in, so less than 7 minutes later, Fnatic know how to deal with it. The same thing happens except at the Baron pit. Stranglethorn comes in, Fnatic avoid it flawlessly and go 2 for 0 and take Dragon. They knew the Zyra ultimate was coming. They knew how they had to react to the Stranglethorn. They did it. They got the kills. They got the objective and left. And from then on, that to me was the point at which Gambit started to fall apart.
Then after that, they started to get then Fnatic started to get that hold that they should have had back. The hold they should have had coming out of lanes, and they lost. They then regained. I wonder if again, it just maybe speaks a little bit of these players being solo queue players, not really having played with each other.
Yeah, that to me is it. Once Fnatic as a team worked out how to deal with Gambit as individuals, Fnatic just took a phenomenal lead. They picked apart Gambit's team fights, and that was that.
The only thing I would say is
Yellowstar eats spears like a madman.
Yeah, Nick put on a very strong showing as Nidalee. Good champion given the circumstances, because Nidalee can do a lot on her own with those phenomenal spears.
Yes.
Like she does sort of need a team there to be able to do something about it, but she doesn't need the team to succeed. Not in the same way as someone like say Orianna, who needs like really, really good communication and like team play, which like we've said before, you're not gonna have with those substitutes.
I mean, amusingly, Nick found himself in a situation on Nidalee that Peke himself found himself on Nidalee 2 weeks ago. The game was going against him horribly, and he was the only one of his team that had enough poke to stop people sieging towers.
The spear hailstorm. Peke said in the game afterwards, one of the things that they found difficult to end out through was that Nidalee pick. He said they would try and siege up, and they'd just start taking Nidalee spears, and they'd have to back off.
Yep. The problem was Morgana was very strong with that spell shield against the Nidalee spears. Eventually, Nick outscaled Yellowstar, and those spears weren't being eaten by spell shields. 3 out of 5, maybe 4 out of 5 even, of Fnatic in the end had Banshee's Veils. Because a single spear on Peke, or a single spear on Morgana, or Cyanide, or Reckless, that was them out the fight. They couldn't re-engage.
Yeah, so if you do the maths on a Banshee's Veil against Nidalee, it doesn't look like a great buy. Because Banshee's Veil has that 25-second cooldown after it's popped before it comes back. And so people say, well, like, Nidalee Spear's on a 4-second cooldown, she'll just throw another one. But you've got to think, they're not all targeted at you, and they're not all going to hit.
Some of them. Yeah.
So if we're, like, I actually think one spear every 30 seconds is fairly okay in terms of expectations of your dodging. Because it is a slow projectile. So
Yeah, if you
I
say,
actually think Banshee's Veil is a great pick against Nidalee.
oh, it definitely is. But I mean, if you just think of the math, say that she aims every fourth spear at you, that's a spear every 16 seconds at your direction. Assuming that you've got Banshee's Veil, that halves the incoming damage,
And even
assuming that
then,
all of them land.
yeah, even then, you can probably dodge more than half.
So, yeah, you're looking really strong there. But anyway, I mean, yeah, Yellow Star, I think, needed to practice then. He was very, very good. If the spear was going to land and he couldn't get out the way, he landed his own spell
Yeah.
shield. He got it up, but that didn't help in the end when they were trying to siege against it. He ate spears that were too big for his shield, basically. Interestingly enough, Heaver also actually got a Leandries up on his Zyra.
I do
in
like
order
the
to
Leandries
help
pick up on Zyra because you can refresh it a bunch, so you're getting a lot of that burn damage.
Yeah.
And with the root and the slow plants, you're keeping your target's movement impaired, which is obviously doubling that Leandries dot.
The
I
other thing
do
I
like
really
Leandries
like
on
with the
Zyra. It's
Leandries
quite
is
strong.
especially when Fanatics start to siege on Gambit's inner turrets, the inhibitor turrets. If they
Yeah.
go fully commit to that tower, you will land a 5-man Stranglethorn.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that. Will hit everyone.
Stranglethorns is just such a great ult. I
The
mean,
only way it wouldn't hit someone is if Xpeke disengages with his satchel charge. Aatrox has to leap in a direction that he doesn't want. Morgana has nothing to do but flash. Corki has to Valkyrie out the way. You have to burn some major movement abilities in order to avoid a 5-man Stranglethorn.
yeah.
And in fact, Yellowstar has nothing. He's got flash that travels a third of the distance across a Stranglethorn. He's not getting
Yeah,
out.
Stranglethorns is just such a fantastic ultimate. I mean, it does good damage, it buffs your plants, so you're buffing damage like that. And then there's that
Yep.
big knock up. I think it's a second and a half or something crazy like that.
Yes. And I mean, to me, actually, if Heaver is so confident on Zyra, I would love to see if they have to play more matches like this and Heaver is a more consistent thing, although it's unlikely. I would like to see someone pick up a Zyra, especially if it's Heaver, because he's so confident on it.
You
And
know,
then again,
after
have Nick pick up a Yasuo, because Heaver landed several 5-man ultimates. A Yasuo would have annihilated a team fight.
after
While it
seeing
hasn't got the
these
poke-
Gambit subs play, I would hope that maybe they've upped their chances of being picked up by an LCS team looking for players. Like if they've
I
dropped a player,
reckon Heaver is definitely
Heaver
after his
definitely,
showing,
but Cabuchard as well.
very strong,
Very
Gyro
very good
shows.
players.
Yep.
I was thrilled. Like I wasn't expecting much, but I was thrilled to see the Gambit subs do well.
Yeah.
It was
My-
so refreshing and nice not to just be like, oh, they're subs, they're going to get rolled over. They're not
Yeah.
the standard of talent in the LCS. I also think it speaks a little bit poorly of both teams. I think it's poor from the side of Fnatic that a team of subs had a decent chance of beating them, and it's poor from Gambit that like their subs are
Yeah, I
almost
think
playing better
the
than I would
Gambit
expect
subs
them
did
to.
better than I think Gambit would have done
Yeah.
with Fnatic. But
I don't
that,
think
in
that's good at
fairness,
all.
would be because there's less individual pressure on the Gambit team. There's much more team coordination, which is something Fnatic
Yeah, I
do
think
very
also
well.
maybe we're holding Gambit to higher standards. So maybe, like the casters were saying, Gambit have nothing to lose here. Either their subs do badly and it's expected, or their subs do well and it's unexpected. I
Yeah.
think maybe Gambit literally just have a little bit, maybe should just go home and go, well, our subs did well. It's good that we've got such good subs, but are we at the point where our subs are performing better than our main players?
Yeah. I mean, one thing that I'd like to point out as well, Kamikar did very well, but his build was very much individual fights. It
Yeah,
was a build designed to kill Aatrox 1v1. And you saw that in the first few team fights when he came in. He teleported in, he jumped in, he landed his stun, and then died
Yeah.
immediately. There was no follow-up damage simply because his build was designed to kill Aatrox. And I think that's partly the solo queue mentality, that's partly the dueling.
I think in
I know
solo queue it's
Kamikar is
much more
very good
viable
at.
to base your build around small skirmishes because those happen a lot more in solo queue. In the LCS, you will see these big 5v5 fights more, whereas in
Yeah.
solo queue you'll maybe see most like bigger fights are 3v3 skirmishes, and
Yeah,
in
and
those
that's
like
something we'll see
1v1s, the
more
2v2s, the
often.
3v2s, like those DPS builds, those high damage builds will win out. Whereas in a big 5v5 fight, you can't afford to go in and not be tanky.
Yeah, and I think that's the kind of thing that we'll see change if cover card stays more often,
Yeah.
or practices more often in these LCS, even not necessarily in the games, but in the scrims and things.
Yeah.
I think Gambit will be scrimming a lot more with their subs, even if they just pick out one or two for every other sub, for every other.
I think it's difficult
skirmish.
because obviously, like the players you're expecting to play are those 5 starting players, and you can't afford to spend too much time going, well, we'll scrim with the subs just in case, because we need to be scrimming with the players who are most likely to be playing. But I would love to see more from these subs. I really, really hope
Yes.
they do well.
But I think while they can't really afford the time to do that kind of thing, I think they have to because their subs have shown such a good show.
Yeah, there's so much promise showed by those players.
They've been so good. They've just turned up and gone, right, we're going to do this. Deal with it.
I think the other thing it speaks of is a good mindset, because if you, like, halfway through the crowd were chanting, "Who are you?" And like
Yeah.
I felt so bad for them, because like it's not their fault. It's not the subs' fault that the Gambit guys can't get visas. Yes, I understand the crowd may have been like disappointed that maybe their favorite players weren't there, but like they tried. They came and they played so well.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
it would be so easy to come in and go, guys, we're against Fnatic. Like Fnatic have been around since season 1. We're solo queue players. Like we're here on a technicality. We're not LCS standard, and just kind of get really demoralized. But so again, credit to them because they played well, and clearly they had the right mindset going into that. They didn't have that defeatist, we're going to lose no matter what we do, let's pick Heimerdinger mindset. They had that,
Yeah.
we're going to play what we can play well, and god damn, we're going to try and win.
Oh, they did do very well. Now, moving on to
Week 2. No, God, I'm going to say week 2.
5, bro.
Week 5. There we go.
Week 5,
day
4.
2.
There is day 4. There isn't even a day 2 involved. Day 2 was the second NA day. This is day 4. There's no 2 involved. Go home.
Okay, look, second EU day 2. Leave me alone.
Right.
So
first
these
match-
are games you did not see, is that correct?
Yes.
So our
I've
first
looked at
match
the,
was the
stats.
Gambit subs again. I didn't take notes on the Fnatic Gambit game. I was so ready to take notes here. I was like, yep, this time they're gonna do well. Like Roccat, not as high a tier team. I had a moment where I was like, well, maybe the Gambit guys will pull out a win here. It's not expected, but maybe they will. They played so well against Fnatic yesterday. Fnatic are fundamentally probably a better team than Roccat. Like Roccat are definitely picking up in these recent weeks, picking up wins. Like their team players getting more cohesive, even if it's taking them too long to win out games. Roccat, I think, are improving, but I genuinely have moments where I was like, I think Gambit should win this.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've got Nick on that Nidalee again. I think that's a great pick given the circumstances, because it works with your team, but it also works on its own, and it also goes well with the Aatrox pick and the Kog'Maw pick, because both of those benefit from that big attack speed steroid if she gives it to them.
I don't know when Nidalee was picked up in the pick and ban phase, but
Very last
Nidalee
pick.
Nidalee works amazingly against the enemy team composition. No one, except for Celiver on Lucian, has any form of close range or long range wave clear. Lulu, all right, Lulu can glitter lance. She's not going to be able to take out many waves with that.
My favorite thing
She's
about
not even
Lulu's
going to take
glitter
out
lance,
a whole wave.
you can actually, what you can do with Lulu's glitter lance is once you've got enough AP that it kills a backline. It's not so good with cannon waves. Cannon waves spread out a little bit more. Normal waves, if you E the very back melee creep, that puts picks on it, and then you Q, and so you send the Lulu Q up the melee creep line, and the picks Q up the range creep line, and then you can just auto attack and finish off the melee creeps.
Yeah, I mean Lulu has got a load of clear. That's fine, but not an amazing amount compared to a lot of other champions.
It's also like it's not the best range.
No.
Apart from once you've got that E on the melee creep, and obviously you have to extend forward a little bit to do that.
Yeah, so Lulu's got to get pretty close to clear an entire wave.
Yeah.
Jankos, Elise has just about no wave clear.
She's got that Spiderling, which does no
Explosive
damage
Spiderling.
without investment.
The explosive Spiderling, I mean, there's an abyssal pickup at the end, but the explosive Spiderling will clear the mage creeps. That's it.
I
Overpower
remember when
has
I
to
used to
get
play
very
Elise
close
when
to
I was
kill them.
bronze. I would buy like Spirit of the Spectral Wraith, Haunting Guys, Abyssal Scepter, Void Stuff, and I think when I'd finished Abyssal Scepter was when it would start clearing backlines.
Yeah,
Like
so
it's not a very high damage ability.
None
Elise's
of them
strengths
have-
are those Qs with the percentile damage.
none of them have amazingly clear wave clear. And that's where Nidalee's going to pick up. Nidalee throws a spear because you've
Yeah,
got
like
to stand still
you've
to
got
clear
to
away.
do stuff against Nidalee. Like if you're having trouble clearing those waves, she's going to get more time to throw spears at you.
Yeah, it's a very good pickup.
And
Very good.
also, there's
Against
not
that
that
team.
much hard engage onto her. I mean,
No.
there's the Thresh stun, the Elise stun, and the Kale and Lulu slows. But the mobility from Nidalee means that if you're quick, you jump to Cougar form, you hop away.
Yeah, you
Like,
jump to coup form, hop away. If you're still slowed and someone is still chasing you, you can flash over a wall.
and you keep hopping as well. You run through
And you keep
pushes.
hopping.
The
Yeah.
strength of Nidalee is that bugger me, she hard to catch.
As soon as she hits a bush, if she's not slowed
Yeah.
like nobody's business, she's out. She's out.
Yeah, if you're not locking her when she's running away, she's getting away. Like
Yeah.
that's just how Nidalee is.
Now, I mean, overall, especially from the stats, Overpower ran rampant with that Kale in the end.
Yeah, that was.
511 CS.
We've seen
by the end
so
of the
much
game.
Kale recently, and she's never that strong early. But once she's got 2 or 3 items, she will start melting your
Yeah.
team, and she will do it.
I mean,
all over the shop.
What's big with his build there is he managed to get that build going so well. He's got the he's got the Nash's Tooth, and he's got Runarns. But then on top of that, he's also had the time to build Lichbane, Void Staff, and the Rabadon's Death Cap.
Yeah.
There is just so much damage coming out of that. He's got the burst build, and he's got the
I
AoE.
tell you, once you've got those 6 items on Kale, she's so much fun. Because not only are you there with like the ability to save your team from certain death with your ult, the ability to help engages and disengages with your heal and your slow, you can also melt a carry with a Q and 3 auto attacks.
Yeah, I mean,
And
the
like
other
you
thing
can
is-
be hitting the rest of the enemy team while you do it. You are a beast with 6 items on Kale.
Yeah. The other thing is he's also run Flash Ignite, of course,
Yeah.
because his ultimate takes away any real kill pressure from Nick, unless Nick lands a godly spear while he tries to recall.
Yeah, I'm a big fan
Yeah.
of Ignite on KO. I tend, if you're top, you probably run TP, given that TP is currently the most popular
Yeah.
thing on top laners. But if you're mid, that Ignite is so strong.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Like,
So
it lets
overall,
you win fights early.
it doesn't look like any of the subs actually did particularly badly.
But yeah, again, very very good showing from these subs. These again, you've got to afford. This is almost like a solo queue game where they met on Cursed Voice. None of these players are used to playing with each other. Nick is the only original Gambit player. He's effectively on his own. The other 4 are solo queue players that are there in case of emergency for Gambit. They're not really intended to be on a team of their own. I
No.
doubt they've practiced much as a team. Maybe a couple of weeks at most.
I think the other problem is I don't know if Nick is actually the shot caller for Gambit, because I'd bet you that he isn't. Because most mid laners have much more on their plate without having to call shots. Mostly it's the top laner that's
So
the shot caller.
frequently, sometimes I've
I
noticed
would
some teams
very
like
much
they
be
modify who
surprised.
shot calls throughout the game.
Yeah,
Like
definitely.
shot calling can be interesting because like some teams prefer to change it throughout the game based on who's most involved things. So like early game they'll take the jungler because the jungler's the one making the plays, and then like mid game they'll take the mid laner because the mid laner's like roaming around getting those kills, helping secure these objectives. Then late game they'll take the support because the support's job is to control the vision. The support's job is to know what's going on the map. So it's actually the support is best equipped with the knowledge. He's not concentrating on anything else. He's concentrating on that map control.
And I think Gambit were never a team that did incredibly in decision making.
I think Gambit
I
lost a
think-
lot with Alex
I think
Itch.
Nick is struggling more than anticipated because it's not just that they're not getting the shots. It's not just that they're missing regular players. It's not just that they're not communicating as much as they normally would. They probably have very limited shot calling as well.
Yeah,
So
so
they're not making the plays. They're not reacting to the plays. It's difficult.
I believe when Alex Itch left, Alex Itch was shot calling for Gambit. So obviously that was quite a big blow for them. And the reason I say that is because I know he was the shot caller for Team LoLPro, who played in the Challenger Series, which was aired before these games, which we shouldn't be doing that much on, so I'll try and keep this brief. But they were short Alex Itch in the finals of the Challenger Series, which was aired. And you could, like, Alex Itch was their shot caller, and you could see it. So obviously having these shot caller issues is a real problem. And maybe Gambit are were already suffering shot call issues due to that lack of Alex Itch. So potentially the subs would compound the issue even more.
Yeah. I mean,
So-
overall, it's not an incredibly far off game. I mean, yes, Overpower ran rampant, but kills and deaths are fairly reasonably spread, especially on Gambit. Aatrox went 3-3-3.
Yep.
We got Cogmore going 2-2-2. Nick went 1-for-1. So, and so
Yeah,
did
I
he
mean,
go.
like a solid showing from all these players.
Overall, no one got picked out particularly much. So
I
it
think
was
the
just the
takeaway
fact that
message from both of these games is I
Overpower
really
had
hope.
500 farm.
Yeah, I takeaway message from both these games is well played to the winning teams, but I really hope to see these Gambit subs in the future. I
I
hope
would
to
love
see
that.
them on their own team. I hope to see them doing well because I think they did phenomenally well given the circumstances.
If not,
I would shake their
quite like
hand and
to
pat them
see-
on the back if I could.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I would actually quite like to see that, even if it's not in scrims, maybe just having the subs talk to the regular Gambit members and try and give them a
Yeah.
few tips, because there are some things that the solo queue players do better.
Solo
Ah,
queue tends to be
so-
more mechanically oriented. These 5v5 games will be more
Very
like
much.
decision making, vision control, and team play oriented.
Very much so. And yeah, I mean, again, Hiva, an amazing Zyra
Yeah,
player.
very,
I
very
would
good
love to see
Zyra.
Zyra
Great
come back.
Stranglethorns use.
I would love to see it come back because it's got a huge
Yeah,
team ultimate.
he's so good with those Stranglethorns. Like he splits teams. He makes it so like he doesn't necessarily go for the knockup, but he makes it so that there's this zone. It's a bit like Ziggs Minefield. It's this zone that you can't go in.
Yeah.
Like you end up with the being split from your team is now the lesser of two evils because your options are split your team or your whole team gets knocked up and killed.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, if your ADC is towards the back, Zyra's ultimate comes in on your team. Your ADC has two options: get knocked up or leave the team fight completely.
And that is the strength of that Zyra ult, both as a CC tool and as a zoning tool.
Yep. I would love to see it come back. I mean, I understand why other picks have been preferred, especially with something like Thresh and Braum, very strong for very good reasons. Zyra's a little bit more spammy, hasn't got all the tools that the others have, but much bigger team fight presence. Anyway,
Okay, moving on. SK versus Super Hot Crew. The
From the
draft
stats, it
phase
looks
for this was a
S-
little bit odd. Because at the second round of picking for SK, so the first has already been locked in, and then the first two for Super Hot Crew have been locked in. My friend who was with me at LCS turns to me and he goes, Kassadin's open. And I'm like, excuse me? He's like, look, no one's banned Kassadin. And I'm like, but they haven't picked Kassadin. What's going on? And Kassadin's not picked until the very, very last set of picking for SK, where they pick him. And then Super Hot Crew pick Jarvan the Fourth and Nocturne. And I'm sat there going, well, surely that's a Jarvan the Fourth mid. Because, you know, Jarvan the Fourth, obviously lots of early damage and crowd control with that flag drag combo. So they've picked him to deny the early no mobility from, like, before Keston gets his ult. But no, they send the Nocturne mid. They send the Jarvan jungle. And it just doesn't work. Like, the Nocturne pushes the Kassadin into the tower, but he's able to see us in the tower thanks to his W passive. And the Nocturne doesn't get anywhere. He doesn't get those early kills, so he's not that strong. And the Kassadin, in the meanwhile, gets 2 early kills, or like two post-6 kills, and he gets going, and Nocturne doesn't. And I would have preferred to see this Jarvan the Fourth mid. I think it would have done way better. And then, like, the whole thing is sealed when Nocturne just starts ulting the ADC in fights, and he's just not fed enough to do that on his own. He doesn't have enough follow-up. Because obviously the Nocturne ult, much longer range than that Jarvan ult. So if Nocturne's going on his own, he was just dying. He can't kill the Caitlyn because he's not strong enough because he didn't win lane hard enough against the Kassadin. And, like, it didn't work.
Yeah, overall,
I was excited to see it, but it didn't work.
stats-wise, they just got hammered.
Yeah.
Jarvan went 0-5 with Impaler.
I mean, I think if this Nocturne had won lane...
0-6. I'm not sure that a Nocturne can win a lane against a Kassadin. I mean, I can see where it's trying to win lane
tipping
in
point...
a very similar way to Pantheon tries to win against a Kassadin. You push hard, you put a load of pressure on. They both got that little bit of shield. If Kassadin tries to stay around too long, they will win the trade, whatever happens.
So the tipping point was just post level 6, Kassadin and Nocturne duel in one of the river bushes. Kassadin comes away with maybe 100 health. So I think if that duel had gone a little better, and if Nocturne had come out a bit stronger from that lane, he could have then started roaming with his ult and out-roaming Kassadin, especially post level 11, when that Nocturne ult really gets a decent range on it. But instead, the Kassadin was able to roam free, and the Nocturne wasn't. And that was it. Like, the Kassadin gets strong. Like, there's been games already where people have said, I think we won that game as soon as we got Kassadin in pick ban. Kassadin is so strong, and
Yes.
I think you can have a strategy planned against him, but sometimes the strategy against Kassadin is to ban Kassadin as red side. It sucks to effectively lose a ban to Kassadin, but it's better to lose a ban to Kassadin than to lose a game to Kassadin.
Yeah, I mean, I reckon that SK Gaming, at the very least, in the picks and bans, they didn't ban Kassadin because they were like, all right, well, we can play Kassadin, but we know we're going to leave Jess's pick till later on.
So weird. Like,
Jess's can
normally,
play
if you leave Kassadin open, you just first pick it.
In
But they
fairness,
didn't first pick it, and they got it anyway.
in fairness, as Jess's, he is a very, very good player at a lot of the different champions that do counter Kassadin hard.
We've seen a few goes at countering Kassadin. We've seen that Pantheon from LMQ. We've seen a Fizz from, I think it was Kurt, picked Fizz into him.
Yep.
And none of them have gone that well. Like,
No.
I myself have dumpstered Kassadins as Fizz and been dumpstered as Kassadin by Fizz. But when you've got that jungle support as well, especially in an LCS game where you're going to expect the aggression from Fizz and you can be ready to counter it, or from Pantheon, I think just ban Kassadin until Rito works out a way to nerf him that doesn't leave him completely useless, but also doesn't mean that if you're red side, you ban Kassadin.
Yep, I think, again, there are certain things they could have done if Super Hot Crew had picked up Kassadin.
Yeah.
I think, though, they were pretty confident that Selfie wouldn't want Kassadin.
My assumption is they assumed that Super Hot Crew had planned to leave Kassadin up, because obviously you don't just absentmindedly leave Kassadin up in an LCS game. So I wonder if they didn't first pick it on the expectation that Super Hot Crew had some devious plan. And then when Super Hot Crew didn't pick it, they were just like, well, Kassadin's still really good. Let's take Kassadin.
Yeah, I reckon Super Hot Crew planned on not picking it, waiting and using that Kassadin to waste SK Gaming's first pick for another priority.
So that is a common.
And then they thought they'd be like, all right, well, we'll pick up two bigger priority things.
Yeah, so with
SK Gaming didn't, and then Super Hot Crew went, well, we still want these two priority picks. We can still, if we have to, stop a Kassadin. And then Jess's went, oh, all right then, I'll play an unstoppable Kassadin.
Yeah, that's been one of the more recent strategies in big bans, with the more and more champions becoming so strong and so like almost 100% pick banned. People have been. We see more and more leaving multiple up and going. You pick one, we pick two. Your move, sir.
Yeah, you bait out that first pick of something that you know.
You kind of bait out a first pick of something you don't want and you know you can play against, and then you pick two things that are really strong that maybe your opponents want.
I think Super Hot Crew tried that, and then SK Gaming pulled their bluff.
Yeah.
They said, all right, bro, have Kassadin if you want. We're going to kill you.
Yeah.
And then Super Hot Crew went, yeah, but we didn't actually.
Well, we planned to play against Kassadin. What do?
We were like, but we didn't actually want Kassadin. Great. Other than that, yeah, Kassadin got going. Sven Skeren on Evelyn ended the game at 5-1, so he got going. Candy Panda went mad at 6-0-7. N-rated, 12 assists, no kills, no deaths. It was pretty one-sided.
Okay, so moving on to
Fnatic versus Millennium. Oh,
so we've got that good early pressure from Fnatic again. Winning lanes, taking towers. And then it starts to go wrong. Peke's Syndra against LeBlanc in lane was very, very good. Multiple, and I mean multiple, times, Syndra would just stop LeBlanc with that Scatter the Weak. LeBlanc would try and go in, and she'd get stunned and comboed instead. So that was very, very good. That was the purpose of the Syndra pick. That is what the purpose of the Syndra pick has been a lot recently. And again, like I say, Fnatic get this very, very strong early lead, and then they start fighting badly. And basically, Millennium clawed it all back on these fights. And eventually, Peke Syndra, as I've been saying over and over again, there's a Leona, there's an Aatrox, there's LeBlanc. You can only scatter the weak on one of them unless they all go in at the same time.
Yep.
You can't pick something so immobile against so much mobile CC. it doesn't work out.
I think Millennium's team does very much stop the Syndra. I think if it's just the LeBlanc who is overly mobile, then yes. But you've got Evelyn on the enemy team on Cortanks.
Yeah,
He's going
Evelyn
to
can flank you as
appear
well.
out of nowhere, and you're going to have a massive slow. He'll use Agony's Embrace, and you'll never get away.
Yep.
On top of that, Jay Ree with his flash lance,
Yeah,
you are never going to get away from a Leona if he doesn't want you to get away. Twitch is going to stealth. Creatin with that is really good at making those picks. He's going to stealth, run, appear out, huge attack speed, slows the whole 9 yards, and you're dead.
so yeah, with an
Aatrox is gonna
immobile
jump,
champion like
knocked
Syndra,
up, gone.
positioning is god. And with so many
Xpeke is
champions
very
like
good at
Aatrox
positioning.
and Twitch in the meta, positioning is so hard.
Yeah, Xpeke is really good at his personal play. Very good.
Yeah,
And
it
I
was
think
great.
he's
Like, he
probably
generated
one of the
lots and
best
lots of
players.
picks. He bursted LeBlanc when he needed to burst LeBlanc. But at the end of the day, he just wasn't able to kill everything before it killed him.
No. And that's sad, but I mean, his positioning is very good.
Peke's
on
a great
personal level.
player. Like, there's
But-
no denying Peke's a great player.
I mean, in the end, the minions killed. The CS is actually a very, very strange story. With Reckless on Corki, capping out at 50 CS above Creatin on Twitch. Xpeke, almost or over 100 CS ahead of Kerp. Yeah. Soaz, almost 50 CS ahead of Kevin. They're ahead, except in kills. Corki
Yeah.
is 3 for 1, where Creatin is 7 for 1. Corki has 5 assists, Creatin has 11. Xpeke is 6 for 6. And then Kerp on LeBlanc is 8 and 2.
Yeah, like living Kurt with its trackball. Anyway,
Brilliant.
like
brilliant
I say,
CS.
those fights were won by Millennium. I think
Yep.
Fnatic need to do something because you can't just keep winning these lanes and losing the game. Something's wrong if that's happening.
Someone's got to come up with something that counters LeBlanc that isn't Syndra. She gets.
You know what
pooped
counters
at.
LeBlanc? Banphase counters LeBlanc.
Yeah. So
The
that
other
leaves
thing
the
is that
Banphase,
in
LeBlanc,
the
Castlin.
most
Right.
recent patch, LeBlanc's had the silence removed
Yes.
from
That in
her
itself
sigil.
is going to.
And
nerf.
I tried it. I was like, oh, it won't be that bad. I can still just delete people. It actually makes her lane a lot harder because there's counterplay to you jumping in.
Without the silence, she immediately is open to retaliation,
Like,
and
the
that's
first-
what made it strong.
Yeah, the
is
first
that
thing
there
I
is
played
so
it against was a
little-
Lulu, and immediately I'd go in and I'd be like, free damage, and the Lulu would polymorph me and EQ me and auto attack me.
I mean, the one thing that makes LeBlanc so strong is that even if you're a big lane bully,
Yeah,
you
it's
still
hard to
can't
trade back to
stop
her.
LeBlanc trading. You still can't stop her CSing. As soon as she gets to about level 6, let's be fair, her distortion is going to start killing backlines of the minions.
Yeah, that's why that
She's gonna start
distortion
free
maxing
trading.
build got popular as well.
And there's nothing you can do to stop it with the silence. But as soon as that's removed, you're going to find a lot of people will counter her. I mean, I'd really like to see how a LeBlanc into a Cassadin or a Fizz will work.
Yeah,
because she'll try to trade, and then Fizz and Cassadin will just out-trade her.
I'd also like to see Ziggs. LeBlanc used to do very well against Ziggs, but now with that
Yep.
satchel charge to disrupt her dash, and
Yep.
obviously the ability to trade back when you're silenced, I think Ziggs could be a lot more effective against her now.
I think that will very much change the mid lane matchup if we even indeed see LeBlanc picked
Yeah, it
anymore.
might be that LeBlanc is considered like significantly bad enough without the silence to.
I reckon
see
that will
a
be
lower
it. 'Cause
pick
she
rate.
won't be able to trade in lane, which is her big plus side.
And then,
the
of course,
last
she'll
match-
still be able to delete people, but she won't have such an overbearing lane.
But she won't be able to get ahead so easily as
Yeah.
well.
Okay,
Anyway, our
so
last match
final
is
match
one
of the week
it's one that we will be covering in our highlights
was
game.
Alliance versus Copenhagen Wolves, in which the crowd was well aware of the fact that Froggen should have picked Anivia.
Also, Alliance did just run rampant with this. I suspect that was highly because of Tabs going 15 for 4.
Yeah, they ended it well eventually. They were a little bit shaky in the mid game.
Mm-hmm.
Like they started to lose a bit of ground to the Wolves. A lot of towers went down. It was kind of awkward. And I actually think Anivia would have been a better pick than Nidalee, because there was a lot more outright fighting, which Nidalee's not that great as.
No.
Whereas Anivia will annihilate people in 5v5 fights with that Glacial Storm and the stun.
Yep. I only think potentially that it could have gone for um, Nidalee, because if Fizz tries anything post 6, if he just tries to trade without using his ultimate, if Nidalee Cougar forms and then EQs, that is about half of his health.
Yeah.
No matter how well Fizz trades, Nidalee with
Yeah,
that
Fizz is
scaling Q,
squish.
with that percentage damage Q,
Yeah.
and that big AoE wave clear, Fizz actually can't do very much. And of course, if Nidalee just backs off a little bit, waits for Fizz's playful trickster to come down, and then jumps into him, that's another load
The
of
other thing is
damage.
that like you can use your E to dodge Nidalee's spears. That's quite a long cooldown and quite a lot of mana to dodge
Yes,
a
that's the
spear
other
that
thing.
comes out every 4 seconds.
I think it's 15 seconds on that playful trickster.
Yeah, it goes down with levels. It's very, very long level 1. I think it's something like 6 seconds at max rank.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
But
it's
still,
very
like,
much an
you
early
don't
lane
really
phase
want to be
that
burning it
happens.
over and over again to dodge spears. You want to be burning it to fight and do a lot of damage, because that's what
I think
Fizz
the
is all
other
about.
problem is that Frog and Zenivia, people know how to counter it, and that's one of two ways. You either absolutely mind-numbingly poop on it early game, which hasn't ever happened yet, or your other option is just don't deal with it at all. And the Copenhagen Wolves aren't the kind of team that can just back off very easily, especially with their team comp. They're sort of the engage and battle it out to the
So
end. With
the other thing
Irelia.
I would note about Alliance's comp was that they several times demonstrated a very, very good CC chain from Morgana and Elise. Like, they would layer the binding and the stun, but they wouldn't really have any way to follow it up, except to hope an Italy spear hit afterwards. Like, either they'd be out of position or they just wouldn't be able to follow it outright. And, like, several times, especially on Brom, they'd land one, followed by the other, and he'd be locked for 4 seconds-ish. But they wouldn't be able to do anything about it. And I think a slightly more all-in oriented team, if you're going to aim for that CC chain frequently, would have been nice.
Yep, I mean, they have got a very good all-in team, excepting Froggen's Nidalee, if Wicked and Tabs are nearby. If they're nearby, Lucian, and especially, we've got that burst build. Well, no, we've got a completed build, actually, from Wicked with the Runans and the Nashes, on top of a Void Staff, Sork Boots, and Rabadons. That's all the damage from Kale.
That's it. Like, again, we see this Kale becoming huge in the late game. One thing I would
Kale's
say,
nearby,
Young Bucks Irelia was, I think it's Young Buck. Copenhagen Wolves is Young Buck, right? Young Bucks Irelia was huge.
12 for 3 at the end
so
of the game.
So that dash,
massive,
plus the CC mitigation from Irelia's passive, means that she can jump onto Kale, stun her up, and start really putting damage on her. Kale is quite squishy without her ultimate.
The other thing I like for Young Buck's build in the end had a Thornmail, which is really useful against an auto-attack based team. So you've got Wicked will start to hurt himself, although you haven't got any magic resistance other than a Banshees on Young Buck. But Kale will start to hurt himself with all that attack speed as well. And the other thing is Tabs on Lucian with the double tap.
Yeah, the double tap
of course,
will actually take chunks out of you.
Double procs out Thornmail with a Randuin's and a Thornmail. Irelia is much tankier. She can take a double tap. Tabs probably couldn't afford very much at the end there to take the damage from the double tap back at him. On top of that, you've got both Boots and Zephyr on Young Buck. You are never escaping from that Irelia unless you kill her.
Again, the tenacity with Irelia. I love Irelia's passive so much because it means that she can dive into these situations and she's so hard to CC lock down because with 4 champions around her, she's got like 30-40% from her passive, 15% from masteries, and 25 or 35% from Mercrez. She's nearly ignoring CC at this point. Like, she's like a Mundo pre-nerf with his W. Just, like, you can't lock them down. It's almost a waste to put CC on them. The CC has to be death or nothing, almost.
Yeah. We will be covering this more in detail later, but we're going to move on to the first of our 3 highlighted games. But in first, before we do that, the Alliance Copenhagen Wolves match was the longest this week, and you can tell that if you simply look at the builds. Many people reaching full build.
They got a long way through.
Tabs had swapped out his boots for a Zephyr. Everyone was full build, except Braum, and that's pretty much it. Froggen didn't have an enchantment on his boots.
Yeah.
Other than that, everyone's full build. So anyway, that was just highlight that.
Our highlighted games. Our first highlighted game was
Curse versus
Cloud9. And the reason I've chosen to highlight this game is because it's one of those rare games where Cloud9 don't just stomp the early game and take it into a win. And
Yes, Curse showed an
Curse
incredible
played
early
very
game,
well. Like,
which is something they've not been doing too recently. Their early game hasn't been incredibly on point, especially compared to Cloud9's, which really is just, we've got an amazing team, we're going to dominate lanes and walk through.
yeah,
Curse
Curse
put up a very good fight.
controlled very well. Lots and lots of wards, lots of objective pressure with that Jinx pick. And so yeah, they actually came out the early game with a gold lead, which is rare against Cloud9. Normally, Cloud9 will take that first Drake fight, they'll ace you, they'll take the dragon, and boom, Cloud9 are miles ahead.
Yeah. The only problem that Curse really had then was that Cloud9 proved that it's not just their early lead that wins them games. It's the fact that they know exactly what to do and how to fight.
So at nearly 17 minutes, we see maybe the first slip up from Curse, where Quas uses his TP into lane. As soon as Cloud9 see that cooldown burn, they take dragon.
Yeah.
So as soon as they know, they guarantee that numbers advantage. They know Curse can't fight them anymore. Dragon. So that gives them some gold. And then Cloud9 also demonstrate very, very good tower diving technique, where they pop in and out of tower range, swapping that tower aggro, so that they can kill someone under the tower and not give any kills back for it. So that was good. And then, this is what I want to highlight most, is the team fight micro from Cloud9, where they're swapping in and out of fights. They're rotating. It's like a wheel of Cloud9 as they fight. The low health, no cooldowns members go to the back where they can't die, and the high health cooldowns up members come to the front. And once the cooldowns are all up for the guys at the back, they come round, they burn their CC, and they get to the back again before they die. And they just rotate through, and it's beautiful. Like, it's so
very
good.
Strong there.
So if I can
Other
find...
thing worth noting, of course, Balls by the end of the game is so tanky. He goes actually full tank Renekton, not even a hint of damage.
Yeah, like, the thing is
that's exactly what their team needs.
That is what you need from your Renekton come late game. You're not relying on him to
land in hooks, makes the picks. Corki is able to follow up with the bombs. TF again and Meteos on that Lee Sin. You've got so much ability to burst someone down. You don't need the damage from
especially late game, considering Renekton's poor scaling. You're relying on Renekton to be in that fight and doing the AoE magic damage with some Fire Cape and Dominus, and you're relying on him to have the Randuins, the stun, so that you can't simply ignore him. But he's not there for damage, he's there for tanking. He's there to eat damage, not deal it.
Yeah.
So
and there's no other real tank in the team. Meteos, while he has in the end gotten a Spectre's Cowl and a Randuin's, it was pretty late pickup. He's got those Merc treads, but he did go for the Elder Lizard, which is common. But actually, Lemon Nation has a surprisingly little amount of tank. He's gone for Moby Boots, Mikhail's, Locket of the Iron Solari.
That's actually one of the strengths of Thresh, I think.
He's not very tanky. He's susceptible to being burst.
But yeah, you see these Thresh picks,
but of course,
sometimes
isn't.
Sometimes you see these Thresh picks. You see they have Face of the Mountain. They have like Runans. No, Randuins. They have some fucking. They're tanky Threshes. But then sometimes you see Threshes. They build Mikhail's. They build Bucket the Iron Solari. And their utility, and that's the strength of Thresh. He can build what he wants because his skills is so strong.
Yeah.
And so you can build for your team, and it epitomizes the support role. You're building for your team and not for yourself.
Yeah, Balls said, "Look, I'm going tanky. I'm just going to eat every piece of damage they have." And then Lemon went, "All right, then I will literally be everywhere at once and throwing out shields and hooks and speeds."
Like Balls and Lee Sin are the meat of that team. Thresh provides the utility, Twisted Fate and Corki provide the damage. Yeah. And so let's have a look at our clip from the fight.
Is going to be Cloud9 microing like bosses, making sure that all their damage at the front line, those people that don't have damage or cooldowns, are at the back line, so that they just don't take the damage until their cooldowns are up again.
Okay, so here we are. We've got most of the members of the game are down here. They're looking at this bot tower. Cloud9... Quas is up here. This is Jax. Cloud9 know that Jax is going to push that tower if they don't do anything. So Cloud9 are looking for an in here. They're looking for a moment to go, pull all the triggers, force Quas to TP back. Don't let Quas get any time to DPS that tower. Let's force them to fight. Let's force that summoner spell out. So they dance a little bit. I starts getting ready, and there's a Lee Sin queue, and they're in. So now they're fighting. This is it. The Twisted Fate's ult's down. Quas is TPing to the tower, and we're in full-on fight mode. Dominates very, very low. That Elise hasn't really got going. She hasn't been able to buy all those tank items. Despite being a utility tank, she's quite squishy. So she's really starting to melt to Sneaky Castro. He's forced to flash out. And now things are really going south. Sneaky in this all this time has actually been DPSing down the tower. Tower's nearly dead, so this is nearly diveable for Cloud9. But now, damage coming out of Jinx. Ball's very, very low. Balls can't be at the front, so Balls is now at the back. He's the tank, but he's at the back. Jinx has been sat in the back all this time DPSing, but Cloud9 is still ready to fight. Meteos is still really tanky. And now, Braum's dead. All that protection, that stun is gone. Things are really, really starting to go south for Coast. Not Coast, Curse. But look, all these low health members, all these people lacking the crowd control, lacking the cooldowns, they're at the back. High, Lemonation, they're still full health. They're currently taking the hits. And so Cloud9 start to kite back. Quas goes in, there's his stun gone. Lemonation's low, and Lemonation's microing out. Quas unfortunately gets that leap strike up, but now people are killing. So this is bad for Cloud9 now. Curse have got that Jinx passive going. She's scary, but again, the low health is at the back, and now the stun's up, and that allows him to just give cop. And that micro, that ability to keep people alive yet still use their skills effectively, wins this fight for Cloud9. The other thing I would like to highlight is that last Jinx rocket against Twisted Fate. If that had crit, that would have given Cop the speed he needed to finish chasing down Sneaky. I think the whole game could have gone differently if that rocket had crit, because Cop would have been stronger, they would have been able to push objectives. But obviously it didn't crit. That's kind of how RNG is. Like, he's only got that 25% from Static Shiv.
And something's happened, I guess.
Yeah, sometimes shit happens and you wish it had happened to someone else.
Yep. But again, Cloud9 knew exactly what they had to do with that.
Yeah.
So
that was testament to the
so
high
much damage at the start, while the rest of Cloud9 were just freely dealing it out.
Yeah, that Renekton was so big.
Hang on a moment, guys. I actually can't take any more damage. So he backed off, and then Cloud9 went, well, we're still full health, so we can keep dueling this for a bit. And then they start to back off. And they just do it perfectly. They wait for those cooldowns, then they re-engage when Curse don't expect it.
Yeah, like such testament again to the team fighting skill of Cloud9 as well as that early game strength with the dragon fights. So, second highlighted game of the day is Super Hot Crew versus Copenhagen Wolves. And we're highlighting this, if I can find my notes, partly simply down to the way I love Mimer's Kale. It was like the Kale gets strong anyway, as we know. Like, we've seen so many times. This Kale pick gets stronger and stronger and stronger as the game goes on. But also, sorry, I'm getting slightly distracted by my notes here. I've done it all in the wrong order. There we go. Oh, balls. There goes Skype. Hang on a minute, people. We'll try and get Crumpet back. Oh, I think we've gone offline. Oh my gosh. Oh, this is my home internet, people. Oh my goodness. This is a... okay, let's take a quick technical issues break. I think I'm going to have to restart my router. And we're back. And I need to close chat because that's the thing. Right, there we go. So, as we were saying, Mimer's Kale. It got better throughout the game. Like Kale herself, started off a little bit weak. Very, very early ults. Not what you want from Kale. You want Kale's ult to... Like, you want it as there's projectiles coming towards that ulted champion. And you just want it to gobble up all those projectiles. Like, literally turn them into 0 damage. Like, if you imagine doing it to a Veigar, it's like Zhonya's. You want to pop it as there's stuff coming towards you so they can't just hold it and wait for it to wear off. So...
you want to use it when Irelia initiates that Q, when Fizz throws that fish, when Fizz Qs in, when Unlimited lands that one hook that's going to pull you back to the team, when Lucian ultimates. As soon as Lucian ultimates, if Kale ults his target, their target can literally stand in the way, purposefully eat Lucian's
They
ultimate.
can
It's like a
do
Braum
Braum's
shield,
job
but
effectively,
infinitely
even
better.
if they're not a tank.
Yeah.
But as the game progressed, Mimer's Kale got stronger and stronger and stronger, and by the end, those ults were fantastic. They were on point.
Yeah.
They ate damage. They kept people alive. They were perfect, almost. Like they were
They were
so
very, very
good.
good. I wouldn't say at the beginning of the game that Mima was a
Like
weak
he
Kale
wasn't a
player,
bad Kale,
but
but he
he
definitely
ended this
improved.
game a better Kale than he started, and that wasn't just because he got fed. Although, I would like to see how Mima would cope with being behind as a Kale.
Yes.
Because he did get an early kill, he did get pretty
Being
good
behind,
CS.
even being
I would
equal
like
on
to see how
Kale,
he
you're
copes.
a little bit weak until you've got those few items. So
I
yeah,
would like to see how
maybe
he
we'd
copes.
have to see how how Mimer's Kale copes under a little bit more pressure. But I'd commend him. Like he definitely improved. Like we said, he wasn't bad, but he got better, and that's never bad. Like you're playing this game for money. You sure as hell better hope you're getting good at it.
Yes.
And
So,
one of the other
on
things
top
we
of that,
saw, no swap.
no lane swap at all.
Not
Again,
decreasingly
reasonably
common.
standard lanes anyway. I reckon that Youngbuck was fairly confident that, especially early game, he could take that Kale. And I suspect that Woolite and Unlimited with the Lucian Thresh were fairly confident that they could probably beat a Twitch
Yes.
Nami early on. And so Copenhagen Wolves didn't have any reason to swap that.
I find Twitch Nami a little bit odd, because Nami is normally more of a peel type support with that wave, that bubble.
Yep.
Whereas
But
Twitch is more about those like early mid game assassinations with Blade and with Yumus. So
definitely.
I'm not entirely
Yero
convinced,
did
but it did
Chrono.
kind of work out.
Well, I mean, you've got to remember, if it's just a straight 2v2 fight, if Nami lands a bubble, Twitch can guarantee
that's
his
definitely
concoction throw. And that's 2 stacks. If he autos, concoction throws, and then autos again. That's
and
4
with
stacks.
that Nami W on him as well, I suppose.
Full. The Nami W with the speed buff, you've got to remember that it doesn't just heal, which is something that actually, of course, they'll have been fairly confident about. Because of Nami's heal, it'll counteract a lot of the poke that Woolite will get out on Lucian, because he's a very high poke champion. It'll nullify a lot of it. And so the speed buff from Nami's passive, if she lands a bubble, Mr. Rolls can just about obliterate something. And I think Twitch is very good at 100 to 0 bursting someone if he gets a pick. And Nami as a champion lets him get those picks. Unlike a Thresh Hook, it's not blocked by a minion.
Yes.
Unlike a Leona, she doesn't have to fully. Nami doesn't have to
commit. She's not obliged to go in once it's hit.
She can make a pick at a distance. She can literally just say, "And you can die, and you can die," and that just happens. I think it worked very, very well, especially late game. Of course, if Nami lands a bubble, TF lands a gold card, you are dead.
Yes.
Without a Quicksilver Sash, there's nothing that will get you out soon enough.
And
on top of that, of course, a massive Kale and a Jarvan on Impaler, which did so well. There were some really good ultimates, actually.
One thing I did like, Fizz Dot got first blood. I keep talking because I love Fizz. He's so much fun. I love. You've got to get him going early, and one of the ways you do that is with that dot. 8% missing health, plus ignite, plus the I think it's 30-40 odd base dot damage with scalings.
Yep.
Is actually a fair chunk at early levels. So you've got to be looking. You'll be looking for those low people. You just poke them with your trident and ignite them, and you actually chunk them really hard. So I think that's good. That's good use of the Fizz pick.
It was. Unfortunately, as we've said earlier, Kaltard isn't majorly confident on that Fizz. It's not a champion he plays a lot. Well, he did in Season 3 play a lot of Assassin champions.
The thing about Season 3 was Season 3 was all about Assassins.
Yeah, and he did it very well. He did do it very well, but mid to late game, we saw Fizz fall off. He wasn't roaming as he needed to be. He was busy in mid lane trying to starve Selfie, which helped, but in the end, I think Kaltard needed to have roamed a lot more and let his team know that Selfie was coming.
Yeah.
I think he needed to say, right, I'm roaming bottom. I don't know where Twisted to it. Yeah? Because they had very good river control around middle with the vision.
One thing I'd be slightly interested to see, would be a Fizz to wait out a TF and then stick his fish to him as he leaves. Because
Yeah.
if you teleport with the fish on you, it follows you as long as the projectiles actually hit you and the fish is stuck to you.
Again, depending on when
So
you
I
teleport.
think a
If you
super
teleport
duper
as
cool,
soon as
yeah,
if
a
if
super
you
duper
teleport
cool
with
out
this
play
phase,
would be to stick your fish to the TF so that as he lands, he gets fished, and then your team at his
knocked up.
end kill him. I think that would be so cool to watch.
I think that'd be awesome. I mean, you have to remember, of course, actually, if you displace yourself in any way or get displaced, as soon as the fish appears on the ground, as in as soon as I know your manatee or your whatever you've got because you've got a cool fizz skin, as soon as that appears in Summoner's Rift, if you displace yourself, you don't take damage from it and you don't get knocked up. We've seen it happen a few times. Some people have
I
gotten
know a
really
few
good
Elise
flashes.
E blocks the
Yep,
fish.
the repel causes that to happen. But yeah, if you there's a period of time between when the mouth appears on the ground and the damage hits. If you displace yourself then, as soon as the mouth appears, the fish is rooted.
Yeah.
And you can get out of it. And we have seen people do that. I mean, of course, the fizz fish is on a significantly lower cooldown than Flash, and it might not be worth it. But I think people are worried that if they try and land that fish on TF and he teleports, all of a sudden, well, he might teleport at just the wrong time and your fish will be stuck in mid lane. And you'll be like, oh, well, that sucked.
Yeah, like if you're even if you're trying to hit it on a teleporting
Well,
TF,
the
it
other
only
thing
takes
is-
about 1.2 seconds for TF to disappear. So if your reaction was at all delayed, you just miss the fish anyway.
Yeah, I think it would be really funny.
It would be amazing to see
Very funny
happen.
to see.
I think the chances of seeing it happen not so high.
No, not so. But anyway,
But moving on to the highlighted moment from this game,
Yep.
we have a great combo from Super Hot Crew.
absolutely awesome Nami wave.
Yeah. So, oh god, I need OBS open, or we're just going to be talking about blank scene. So,
Yay, blank scenes.
too far back, too far forward even. There we go. No, there we go. I don't know why you've done that, YouTube. You're not very helpful, are you? Let's skip back a little bit further. Okay, so this inhib's getting low, which is not good. Oh, blimmin' heck, YouTube, you're rubbish, aren't you? So here we are. The inhib's getting low, and there's good siege coming in from Copenhagen Wolves. This is bad if you're Super Hot Crew. The last thing they want is this inhib going down. Selfie's just clearing out super creeps already. Look how low the inhib is. So they're almost at do or die. They're getting some damage in with Mimer's Kale. I do hope I put this on the right bit. Oh, it's going to be really awkward if I haven't. Selfie's got to keep those super minions off. And now, Copenhagen Wolves see their moment. Look how low that inhib's going. And so they go. Great job. Not so good at Java EQ. Flayed out. But that Nami wave catches everyone. And Kale is just able to go to town. Especially with Selfie with the ult on him there. Like, Kale's now just able to put damage down. Like, that's 3. As a great man once said, oh baby, a triple. And, like, that is just such a beautifully good Nami ult. And that's a sub. Like, Yero was subbing for them. So that's just great support play. And, you know, I think people kind of underestimate just how powerful supports are.
Yeah, and I mean, it was very, very good Nami wave, and I think actually a slight misplay from Unlimited, to be honest. Most of the flashes on Copenhagen were up. If Jarvan had come in and ulted, they could have just flashed, disengaged, they've blown summoners, but that's fine. Unlimited flays as soon as Jarvan EQ's in.
Yeah, it was a
Nami
very
wave
good
comes
play,
in,
though.
and then Mima cleans everything up because they've got
Yep.
no way of stopping him. Because I'll be honest, Young Buck's not going to stop him at this point. Mima is huge, and they can't flay it. They've got nothing to stop him.
It's a good trick, though, flaying Jarvan out of EQ.
It was a very good flay. I will give him that. But I think it was a good flay that was a little bit too reactionary and not quite enough of.
It is quite a short
Hang on a
cooldown, that
moment.
flay, so
Hang
maybe,
on a moment,
like,
they're trying to engage.
if in the heat of the moment you're like, oh Christ, Jarvan's going to knock up half my team, maybe you flay off instinct. Like, you don't even think about it. Like, you've got to be...
I'm not going to say flaying off instinct is a bad idea.
You've got to
I'm
be
just saying,
fast to flay, anyway, to flay an
Yes.
EQ.
Yep. I think from now on, though, there will be that second thought of doubt in Unlimited's mind that goes, hang on, they're engaging. Will I need it?
Do I need my flay for something else?
Will I need it in the next 4 seconds?
Okay, so moving on to our final highlighted fight of the week before we move on to play of the week.
Yep.
Is Alliance versus Copenhagen Wolves, where we didn't see Anivia.
No.
Much
No.
much to the distress of the crowd. This was the last game of London LCS, so I guess spirits were running high. It was insane. People were howling.
Absolutely.
People were howling. People in the stands, like the high up seats, kept going, "Spartans, what is your profession?" To which everyone sat at the lower tiers would go, "Who? Who? Who?" It was fantastic, and people were howling. People were going, "Hodor." Wonderful. But in all seriousness, I think the Anivia pick might have worked out a little bit better than the Nidalee. Because it was big, grouped up fights, not long poke fests. Which I think is important.
Yeah, I think for me, against this team comp, again, I don't know how early Nidalee was picked. But against
Nidalee
the Copenhagen
was
team
last pick. I remember because I spent the whole thing in pick and ban phase maybe Froggen's going to pick Anivia. Maybe he'll do it. Maybe. Just for the English crowd, he'll pick Anivia.
I think there are 2 big things with that. Anivia would have been great against this team comp because they are an all-in team comp. Except for Woolite, every single one of them has to be in melee range.
Yes.
Anivia's ultimate goes down. Wicked, they get off their ultimates, keep everyone in the same place. Shook stuns someone. Tabs gets out a load of damage, and that's awesome. But at the same time, Irelia has huge escape potential. Fizz has huge escape potential. Braum can just leap to someone who has huge escape potential. Woolite has pretty good escape potential. I mean, it's not a massive speed boost, but hey. And again, Lee Sin can just jump to someone else who has escaped. Yeah. If Anivia was there,
so Anivia would.
In a perfect
I think Anivia's lack of mobility would suck against that team.
I think as well, Copenhagen Wolves would have done exactly what happened last time Froggen played Anivia, and they'd have just avoided it altogether. Because the only one that can't really avoid an Anivia is Woolite. And how often is an Anivia going to catch a Twitch out?
So one other thing about this game, again, no swap. No, sorry, not no swap. There was a swap, but unlike we've seen for the rest of this week, no early Drake. I think that was a big mistake from Copenhagen Wolves. When you swap those lanes, what you're essentially doing is you're giving up that early Drake pressure for an early tower. If you then don't lose that Drake, then the swap has gone phenomenally well for you. I think Copenhagen Wolves should have been ready to take that dragon. They had the Lee Sin, they had the Braum to buff those resistances, they had the Twitch to do the early damage, and they didn't take it. Maybe they were just a little bit nervous about microing that Drake aggro. It is quite difficult to do because you've got to keep that Drake spinning or it just out damages your champions at that level 1 and 2 mark.
I think the other problem is that it's a lot easier for something like an Elise to do that.
Yeah, Elise can micro the Spiderlings. Though Elise if you take that W at level 2, you can actually lifesteal quite a lot of health back if you're microing properly. The downside is that if you miss micro, the dragon puts that 50% damage reduction debuff on you, which obviously halves the lifesteal and spell vamp. So maybe they were just a little bit nervous about that micro.
I think they were nervous about 2 things. Is that one, that micro has to go perfectly. Otherwise, Lee Sin can't just afford to take those additional hits.
Yeah.
Elise can, because if she fails the micro, the dragon hits one of her Spiderlings.
Well, if Elise fails the micro, the dragon hits her, and then she re-micros and it eats the Spiderlings again.
Yeah, so it's a lot more forgiving. And, of course, if Shook had turned up in the jungle and repelled, if he smite Qs, that does a lot more than just a smite.
Yeah.
No matter what happens, he gets perfect vision, he comes down in the right place, because what's going to happen, especially at level 2, if they're trying to micro the dragon and you see Elise's repel go down, worst case scenario, or sorry, if you still get that dragon, you have to pull it out. You can't micro the dragon while you're trying to kite it.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
And so, all of a sudden, Shook doesn't get the dragon, but Lee Sin takes 3 fireballs. So does Braum, so does Twitch. All of a sudden, mid lane and your top laner rotate.
Yeah, the other thing is you've got that Nidalee mid early spears, I guess.
Yep, you've got a 3v3, a very strong 3v3 in the favor of Alliance. I think Copenhagen were right to take it very, very carefully because it could have gone very far south if it had
I
gone
think
wrong.
they should have done something, though, because you can't just let them have that tower. If you let them
No.
take the swap and take the tower and don't take anything back for it, you've lost the lane swap,
No, and the
effectively.
decision is normally in a team where you haven't got the ability to take a very, very easy early dragon, like with the Elise. The decision is normally to push that bot tower, take that down,
Yeah.
potentially push into the next one, at least get some damage onto it, because especially late game, it's going to be harder to do that. Or potentially, as we've seen before, back in spring, your job was literally, you didn't lane swap back until you'd both taken 2 towers. I mean, you potentially pressure that second, and if they don't stop you, you take it. But they went for the dragon.
However, despite this, the very early lead taken by Alliance, Copenhagen Wolves, despite being they are bottom of the league at the moment, they took a very good mid game. They started roaming well. They picked well. At one point, they picked Froggen top lane, and Froggen later tweeted that he thought that he'd lost the game for his team at that point. He said, "I thought we'd lost because I died top." I think it's a good marker of Froggen is good at knowing what he's done wrong. He's not going to go, "Oh, well, it's not my fault because my team should have been doing something." He goes,
Yeah, it's not
"It's
my
my
fault
fault because I got
died."
caught and I shouldn't have done."
Yeah.
But secondly, it's also good to look like League is a team game, and sometimes it's very easy to blame your teammates. You go, "Oh, they're doing this. They were doing something wrong," and like maybe sometimes you can't do anything, but sometimes you've got to look and you've got to go, I just lost the game for my team. Like, I have made this misplay, and it is bad enough that the enemy team can now win."
Mm-hmm.
However, they didn't win.
No.
Although, Young Bucks Irelia was on fire.
Yeah.
Trinity Force Zephyr out of the
3
gate.
and 5.
She was a force to be reckoned with.
Mm-hmm.
My God, I've seen Aurelia do some damage in my day, but my goodness, she went ham. That hit-and style with all the extra attack speed and the buff from Trinity Force's Spellblade procs, absolutely massacring Squishy.
It really shows you why people pick Irelia against these big tanks, against Kayle. It shows you why people used to pick it, and why they're still picking it now. Loads of damage, and at the end of the game, with that Thorn Mail and the Banshee
she
spell,
also gets quite tanky, and that
that's
passive
enough of
means that she's not that easy to just focus down while she's CC'd.
Yeah. I think the other big thing with Irelia is that literally if you build your attack speed boots, your Zephyr, and your Trinity Force, you've got all the damage in the world.
Yeah.
Single target. The difference, of course, with Wicked is that at the end of the game, with Nash's Tooth, Runarns, Rabadons, and
he's
Voidstone,
killing half a team.
he's got all the damage in the world on everyone at the same time. I think that's partly what might have swayed that, is that there is a lot of area damage that Alliance is kicking out, and Copenhagen is a team that has to jump all in at the same point. Lee Sin has to be on top of what he's killing, so does Fizz and Irelia. All that Kayle has to do is stand at a distance and keep on swinging.
Yep.
Lucian throws an ultimate in, Nif uses his, they're all dead.
Yeah.
And I think that was part of it. Alliance had a very strong team fight against a team that has to dive one target.
Yeah, although they have got that Twitch. And the thing about Twitch is any mispositioning is punished hard. So while Alliance potentially have the better team fight, any error in positioning was punished big by Twitch.
Yeah. And again, Copenhagen Wolves have a huge pick composition in this team.
Yeah,
they've got Irelia who can leap in at you, stun,
Braum,
everything.
Even
They've
Twitch. I mean, Twitch, I love the ult, but like that stealth makes for such good pickoffs. And he's got the Yumu's Ghost Blade for that extra burst early, like that 6 seconds of extra attack speed. So, looking at the featured fight from this game, this is near the end, and Copenhagen Wolves are actually, they're at knocking on Alliance's door here. Like you can see, this is Alliance's side of the base. Oh, that's gone horrible. So Alliance are kind of bunched up, and they're sort of looking. They're looking to land this Morgana release combo. They're trying to do something. And there's this very, very bulky team from Copenhagen Wolves. The big tanky Irelia. Lee Sin with damage with some tank items. The Brom really bulking up with that Unbreakable and Stand Behind Me. And in the meantime, Alliance are just throwing spears, like Unlimited taking some damage, but you know, he's got a lot of health. It's not too big. So Alliance are just keeping the waves off and looking. Skill shots missing, but you know, they've got cooldowns. They'll wait. And Woolite's slightly out of position. Just slightly. Just enough for Tabs to go, let's pop the culling and force Copenhagen Wolves to do something defensive. Force them to move Woolite. Force them to burn that Stand Behind Me. Burn that Unbreakable. So that's burn. And now Unlimited is actually taking a lot of damage. Even throughout Unbreakable, there's so much going on him. His health's getting really low. And so now Alliance can go. Unlimited's nearly dead. Airwax is in, but his team are just a little bit far behind. There's good ult from Twitch. But Alliance is splitting well so that he's not getting that multi-man hits. Froggen's getting back. And Wicked is going ham. And then he's got the GA. Like, they've killed him, but only once. Tabs is starting to clean up. And now Wicked's back up. Like, the only surviving members are a no-health Youngback and Woolite, who's forced to run away. So good for him. He got that stealth there because Wicked was a couple of seconds from absolutely annihilating his life. And actually, Tabs gets caught out and they trade kills. So now there's no ADC up. But there's a KO and a Nidalee, and that attack speed boost from Nidalee plus that ridiculous attack speed on KO means that Alliance can just wreck the base here. I think this was actually the part where I left the arena to ensure I got a decent place in the queue to see the players. So we'll just see how this plays out. So the only person up is Youngbuck. Froggen and Wicked start melting through inhibitors. Look at that Lich Bane damage, the high attack speed from KO. Like, it's gone. It's dead. And now, like, Alliance are just in an amazing position. Very hard to lose with 2 inhibs down because you can just siege the remaining lane. Absolutely fantastic fight there. Like, that GA pick from Wicked really sealed the deal, I think. Like, maybe
Once
when
you
they...
get to this point in the game, yeah, I mean, Nidalee has a Lich Bane, will just own towers and inhibitors in Cougar form. Wicked has that Runons and that Nashers and Rabadons. He's going to melt things.
But I think that's good situational thinking from Froggen, because normally Lich Bane, if you buy it on Nidalee at all, you buy it right at the end. Because Lich Bane, Nidalee's not really a Lich Bane champion. Lich Bane is normally for people to accessorize Burst, or maybe to accessorize DPS in very specific circumstances.
But if you're trying to take out
if you're trying to take
her jump,
if you're trying to take bases, or if like this is, it's turning into a much more fight-oriented game, not a poke-oriented game. Nidalee wants that extra 0.5 scaling in her kit.
Definitely.
Because Nidalee's not about those fights. She's about that poking. So to add the extra 0.5 to her all-in combo with the cat, or simply with spear auto-attack, is very big for her. So
the thing is, with Nidalee, in Cougar form, all of her abilities have about a 5 or a 6 second cooldown on all of them, which means, on average, she's going to cast an ability between every auto-attack. Every single one of those is going to have a Lich Bane proc.
Lich Bane has that internal cooldown, but I think 3 or 4 seconds, purely so that you can't do things like that. Because otherwise you effectively have a 0.5 scaling on every auto attack, and that's broke.
2 second cooldown.
Yeah, but like you say, like
cooldown
she
is the
can keep
cooldown on her
reproccing
abilities.
that Lich Bane.
Every time.
Yeah.
Every time Lich Bane's up, you'll get a proc with a Rabadons and an Athenes. That's gonna hurt.
So I think that's good. That's testament to good game knowledge from Froggen. He knows he should have picked Anivia. He's got it in his head. He's like, I should have picked that DPS. Man, I should have picked Anivia.
Let's
get a Lich Bane
right now.
Let's get a Lich Bane and we'll just add to the DPS a little bit. It's not quite a Nivea, but it's helping.
Yeah, and I mean they've got a team fight. They've got an amazing team fight already with Shook with his presence. Tabs has an amazing presence with his ultimate. Nif's got a brilliant team fight. So does Wicked. Froggen can afford to branch out and say, right, my spears are doing enough damage. We're sieging well enough. I need to take towers as well. And then as soon as that happens, you've got 3 people that are really capable of taking towers. And that's it.
So one final note on this front is when one of the things people will say when it comes to learning this game is don't just go for that cookie cutter build. Don't build the same thing every game because you read it on a guide. Learn how to look at the game and go, this is what I need for what's happening.
Definitely.
And like sometimes when I'm playing with people, they'll say, oh, what do I build now? Or what do I build on this champion? And I'll say, build this and this, and then go situational. And 10, 20 minutes later, they'll be like, okay, what do I build? And I'm kind of like, you need to learn. You need to look at the game. You need to learn the items. Obviously, that's a big part. And you need to know what to build when. That GA was perfect in that fight. It did what it needed to. And it meant that Wicked was able to keep DPSing while also being positioned to be doing damage. He didn't have to sit right back in case he died. He could be up in their face and still be useful, not just die instantly. And that Lich Bane from Froggen let him keep the DPS up and let him make sure that he was able to take those turrets, take those inhibs very, very quickly.
Yeah. Now, one thing I know really hurt Copenhagen Wolves in their team fights was that because they've got an all-in team fight composition, Braum has to pick up Locket of the Iron Solari. He has to, because otherwise there is so little help for his team on his behalf, which means at the end of the game, he's finished Face of the Mountain, he's got Locket, he hasn't even finished Randuin's.
That is the curse of the support somewhat, though.
He's got Warden's Mail and Giant's Belt. He's been forced to do this, but what that means is that his Unbreakable isn't the Unbreakable it needs to be. It's not what we've seen before, where Braum will eat Lucian's ultimate and go, have you got any more, bro? I'm hungry. Instead, he takes the ultimate and loses 2/3 of his health.
Yeah.
The fight's over. Because your tank is dying. And that's partly because of the team composition. The support had to build that item, and that's fine. What's disappointing is the fact that because of that, Braum couldn't do what Braum does. And I think he'd potentially, knowing the team composition, been bought.
Okay, so those have been our highlighted games. Before we go, we are moving on to our Player of the Week. I kind of had a moment where I was like, So I'm going to quickly take a clip here from the Millennium versus Roccat game.
Roccat versus Gambit.
Nope. Trust me on this one.
That's our play.
Trust me. Okay. Here we are. This is actually from the post game. I want to make sure the impact of this fully understood. So I've actually got the sound from the stream on.
Moments and faults. Let's roll this.
So here we are.
And we can just see how it plays out now.
So watch.
Very careful.
Closing.
There he goes.
Closing. And there it is. The ward's gone. And listen to the crowd.
Now, in all seriousness.
Okay, sorry. That's like fantastic. The crowd was wonderful. It was deafening, man. Seriously, let's move on to our actual highlighted play.
Okay.
This is from...
That was Play of the Week for the crowd. Crowd,
yes,
GG
definitely.
right there. You beat the cameraman. Well done. 1v1, you win.
Yeah. Now, I just
Play
need
of the
to...
Week on Roccat versus Gambit.
Yes.
This is an amazing thing.
So,
just before
YouTube thinks this is Gambit versus Fnatic. YouTube is wrong.
It is. It's actually also wrong on the LoL esports. So, League of Legends, if you're...
Right, you're wrong. Right, remember
you
who you are. Let's quote the Lion King before we go. Okay, so here we are. Gambit have just taken a very, very good fight. They've gone 1 for 2, and they've had a really great spear from Nick that's just gibbed Lulu. They're in a good position. They want to be forcing this tower. And there's Aatrox on decent HP. Vanda's backed. So they're 2v4. And, oh, look, what's that? It's a Celiva. Oh my god, he's so overextended.
Oh, look, Celiva's trying to defend the tower. We're taking it now regardless.
But sneaky overpower. In goes Celiva, in goes Cavachard, and Celiva's got the ult on him. Oh my god, there's a KO here. What do we do? Oh god, our health bars. And look at her go. Beautiful attack moving. And that Runan Turret is melting through the team. And there's 3 kills. Absolutely fantastic bait from Overpower.
I'd also like to point out 2 things here with this fight is that Kale's health goes up because he's got the dangerous game.
Yes.
In his masteries, he gets 5% HP for every time he gets a kill. I'd also like to point out that if Lucian had taken one of those 2 kills that Kale got, one of them, Zyra's Stranglethorn would have killed Kale. And it's just so beautiful that those final hits came through on Kale, keeping him just alive.
Oh, so good.
Very well done.
This was the one time in all those Gambit games that I think maybe their solo queue roots showed through a little bit.
Yeah, they went in.
The ADC's on his own at the tower. He's in Aatrox's jump range. Let's get him, boys!
They went, all right.
And oh god, did it go tits up.
the ultimate came down from Kale, and they said, "We can't kill Lucian. Kill Kale."
Yeah,
and the
let's
call
go on
went
Kale.
through.
Oh god, we can't catch up.
Chase through the jungle as Kale just kites them all, swinging his sword like a merry little dance,
Yeah.
or a little symphony conductor going do to do to do to do to do to do to do. Oh, I've got a double kill. Lucian's killed
Fantastic
something.
play from Overpower.
And I'd like to point out they saved the tower.
Yeah. I think that is Overpower right there going, hey, this is why everyone thought I was great last split, because I'm pretty good at this game. This is why people didn't hate me when I picked Mordekaiser, because I'm good at this game.
It was.
But in all seriousness, fantastic play, fantastic team play, fantastic mechanical play.
Absolutely.
And that, I believe, wraps it up for this week of the LCS Weekly Recap.
Yes,
Feel free to share your thoughts with us
cool
using
things.
the hashtag LCS Recap. I am at RedArrow420. Total Crumpet over here is at Vralka. Tell us
Yes,
what you
I
like.
am.
Tell us what you didn't like. Tell us if you think we should have highlighted different games. Tell us if you think we're wrong about anything, or tell us if you agreed with us. I hope you enjoyed. We should be back next week on Tuesday with another episode. In the meantime, enjoy the LCS. Enjoy your week. And if you happen to be those Gambit subs, I wish you all the best, because I think you're fantastic. I really do.
I think you're awesome. Good job.